Making that switch and then becoming a dog trainer was actually when I kind of needed to become the dog trainer for my own dog. I'm gonna quit my job, gonna become a dog trainer at a facility and work for $7 an hour.
Natalie Dobkins is the force behind Team Canine Training. Her journey began in 2016 with two challenging huskies who turned her world upside down and ignited a passion for understanding canine behaviour. Today, she empowers dog owners and aspiring trainers to overcome reactivity, build confidence, and create truly connected relationships with their dogs.
Starting their own dog training business, they're learning how to be a dog trainer. So any sort of initial advice getting started?
Every single business needs to be focused on organic marketing. Everyone is looking, hey, what is your website? What is your social media?
You map out your client's journey, then you should know where they're going to be and then to properly prep them and prepare them for the journey that they're taking.
But a lot of people will not do something if they don't understand the function behind the reason why they need to do it. Why is this important for me to do that?
Today's episode is sponsored by oneisall, and they sent me their dog fountain to try out. I've actually been wanting one of these for a while, so the timing couldn't have been better. My dogs drink a ton of water because I keep them very active. We're going on hikes, we're playing fetch and tug and doing obedience, so I was constantly having to refill and clean out their water bowls. This thing really has been great. It holds 10 liters of water, so I'm not having to top it off all day. The stainless steel top is super easy to clean, which I love, and the 5-layer filter keeps the water fresh and clean. Plus, there's a red and blue light indicator that lets you know when you need to change and clean out the water. If you've been thinking about getting a dog fountain, then this might be the one to try. I'll put the links in the description. Now let's get to the episode. Before becoming a full-time trainer, you were working in the corporate world. Was there a defining moment when you realized dog training was your true path? And what made you take that leap?
So yes, I was really heavy in the corporate world. So when I first got started, I grew up in Idaho and I moved to North Carolina and I was a regional sales manager. And from there, I was an account manager and then a project manager. And then I was a marketing director. So I was really deep into corporate, but making that switch and then becoming a dog trainer was actually when I kind of needed to become the dog trainer for my own dog, because I had two dogs. I had a Siberian Husky named Aurora, and I had a German Shepherd Husky named Atlas. And just anyone that is a dog trainer or knows anything about those breeds of dogs, immediately in your head, you are thinking to yourself, that must be the loudest house that you must have had. That is so much talking. There's so much just going on there. So just like combining a German Shepherd and a Husky, like who thinks of that? I don't know. I got him off of Craigslist. But anyway, so suffered with reactivity, extremely fearful, very, very, very anxious. And then that was Atlas. And then with Aurora, she had really bad like female dog aggression, and resource guarding could kind of also be reactive as well. And then typical like Husky behaviors, right? Both of them just typical dog behaviors. And
Stubborn.
So, yeah, very stubborn, very independent. So it was like one of those when you like watch a lot of like training content or you look up articles of like how to train my dog to blah, blah, blah. And they're like, get a bag of treats. And I'm like, this dog is not going to work for treats. Are you kidding me? This Husky? No, she will flip me off and go lay in a sunbeam somewhere. Like that's not going to work for me. Right. So that was always really fun. But anyway, so what kind of made me get that switch is like the corporate world and kind of just like being on that, I feel like never ending treadmill where I felt like I really wasn't going anywhere. And my two dogs getting sent off to training for a board and train program. And during that turnover session, that go home session with the trainer who ended up being my mentor, that got me into dog training, as he was talking about these different things, and it was kind of like very like logical and scientific approach that really scratched like the corporate part of my brain, but then also like a very creative side as well. And I've always been kind of like a creative person. And so just kind of having both of that come together in order to achieve this result and achieving a result with these two dogs that I loved so much. It was something that I was like, I gotta do this. Like, this is so great. It gave me a sense of fulfillment that everything that I was doing in the corporate world, just it couldn't compare at all. So that was kind of the defining thing. And then just being able to show up for my dogs more at the time, I was like, what could be better as a dog mom than becoming a professional dog trainer? So that's kind of what made me make the switch and leave, corporate life, really consistent salary, and also health insurance, might I add. And then being like, you know what? I am going to pop all of that into the trash and I'm going to quit my job, going to become a dog trainer at a facility and work for $7 an hour. So that was really the jump there. But it was, like I said, I think that it was something that nothing else that I had done had given me that sense of fulfillment and like the sense of pride, and then also purpose as well, than like working with dogs, but then also changing owners' lives as well. So that was kind of my defining moment of like, all right, bye corporate.
Was there a specific turning point? Like, was it in the first lesson, or was it after you've been working for your dogs for a little bit and you're really starting to see that transformation, or you were just it was starting to make sense to you and you thought this could be a lot of fun? Was there a single moment, or did it just kind of happen over a period of time?
Um, it was kind of a gradual thing, but I will say this. At one point, I remember this distinctly. Like, I can see this in my mind's eye. I was sitting down in my cubicle at work and just doing whatever, corporate people do. And I was looking over my PTO, and I hadn't taken like any time off or anything like that. And I was just sitting there and I was looking at how many hours that I had that it equated to pretty much like a week and a half. And I could not get it out of my brain that I was like, there's 365 days in the year, and I get to have 9 days off to myself. That's it. That's all. That's all that I get. And just coupling that of like this newfound interest and like passion that was developing when I was working with my mentor, when I was, I would get off of work and I would work with my dogs. And it was it just made me feel so much more alive and so much more fulfilled. And in the back of my head, I could never get that out of my head. And I think what's kind of kept me out of going back to the corporate world since quitting my job in 2019 is I was just like, 9 days, that's it. That's all that I get to myself out of 365. Absolutely no. Even if entrepreneurship doesn't work out for me, at least I will always have like this, I can go work for someone else and I have this skill set that hopefully it will allow me a little bit more flexibility than like the traditional corporate world would. So I would say that like that would be the like defining moment. But so it was kind of gradual, but it was that incessant, just like me thinking to myself, only 9 days. That's all that I get to myself out of an entire year. I can't.
Yeah, it's wild when you look at it like that. And when you were working with your mentor, were you working primarily on pet obedience, or was he getting you involved in other things like scent detection or any of the protection sports or competition obedience?
Yeah, really good question. And I think that's what really influenced a lot of like my early training, because he had two dogs because he went to Tom Rose School for Dog Training. So he went there. And when you go to Tom Rose, I don't think that it's a requirement. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that it's a requirement that you have to have dogs, but it's like strongly encouraged that you raise puppies like while you're there. So is that a requirement that like you need to bring a dog?
Yeah, unless they changed it from when I was there. So I left in 2015, is
Yeah.
so 2013 to around 2015 is where I was assisting instructing there. And the students would have to come in with two dogs, so two green dogs, but we always encouraged puppies so they can go through the puppy imprinting stage. We would have them get one puppy in the beginning because they're going to make more mistakes on that first puppy. So after having that puppy for, I don't know, 2 to 4 weeks, somewhere around there, then they would get their second puppy. So hopefully the mistakes they made on the first, they weren't making all the same ones on the second. And then
Yeah.
they had to pass all the requirements with their dogs in order to graduate. So they
Got
had to pass AKC, and it depends on if they were doing the professional or the masters as well. So they
Yeah.
have to pass AKC novice, open, utility in the masters, IGP1, IGP3 in the masters. They didn't have to do the protection side, but they had to do the IGP1 tracking, IGP3 tracking. There was 2 scent detection requirements. Sorry, 3. 2 for the professionals, and then there was a vehicle search. So I think it's like 8 vehicles and then 2
Yeah.
fines, 5,000 square foot building search for the scent detection. There was also a cadaver search, key search, knife search in a 1-acre field. And so in order for them to graduate, they have to pass every single one of those. It's not just pass the written test and you graduate. And it was one of the reasons why I was attracted to the school, because I didn't want to go somewhere where everybody just gets a certificate. I
Yeah.
wanted it to be something that was actually challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just, oh, I passed a couple written tests that I could have cheated on and now I have a certificate. It's like, no, I
Yeah.
wanted something that held a little bit more weight. And I mentioned this before in one of my other podcast interviews, because people questioned Tom Rose about it. They said, well, and he sold the school, so he doesn't own it anymore.
Yeah.
I think he sold it a few years back, like 3 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
But he said people would ask him, or they would say, if you're charging people to come down to your school, you have to give them a certificate. And he said, no, if you
No.
can't train a dog, I'm not going to certify you. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
Like
unless they
any
changed it since
institution.
then. But when
Yeah.
he went through, based on what you were telling me earlier, I'm pretty confident he had to have the 2 puppies. And then you have to have a third one to get a 97% or better on the doghouse obedience routine. It's a routine that Tom Rose made up as he just kind of combined some of the other sports into one simple routine. It had like a forward heeling, a sit in motion, a down in motion, or down out of motion, however you want to say it. Automatic sit when halted, left, right turn, about turn, recall, and a flip finish. So there wasn't too much to it, but you had to get a 97%
Yeah.
on it. And
Yeah.
that was very challenging for a lot of students. And then they were able to test once a week for indoor testing. So any of the AKC type stuff. And same thing with the outdoor testing was once a week as well. So if you didn't pass it on test day, then you could try again the next time. But we didn't want them testing every day, because then, of course,
Yeah.
the dogs get test smart. They start to look around. They go, okay, you can't correct me when we got the gates up and we have the person standing there with the clipboard. Perfect. I could do whatever I want. But yeah,
That's
sorry. So
cool. Yeah.
go ahead and continue. We were talking about if you were just doing primarily pet obedience, or if you started to mess around in the competition, protection, any of that stuff.
Yeah. No, I love that you shared all of that, because I think that sometimes when people have this like perception about dog trainers, and for someone like yourself that is so intimately acquainted with the curriculum and the requirements to become a certified dog trainer, it really puts it into perspective, especially because it is an unregulated industry where anyone can just be like, boom, dog trainer, which, it can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. But I think that for people who have gone through the ropes, for example, from Tom Rose, hearing different things like that, I think is really impactful. So that way, other dog owners are like, oh, wow, that's a lot. Maybe they don't even understand most of what you said. They're like,
right.
Right, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? But yes, I was mostly focused on pet obedience. But he got me kind of interested in PSA, and that really kind of had that first like imprinting on me. That I, did some stuff at Tar Heel Canine as well. And I got more of an interest in PSA. But for the most part, it was mostly just like with pet dog obedience, your regular sit down, come place heel, or if it was from Tom Rose, it'd be climb. And then
Right.
it would also be just like general removing nuisance type of behaviors as well. So that's mostly what I was focused on. And as someone that's like kind of starting out, that's a big chunk to kind of like sink your teeth into, because it's, it sounds simple of just basic obedience behaviors, but putting it all together holistically to get a dog that is willing to cooperate and live alongside their owner, and make their owner's life better and easier. There's a lot of things that go into that. So at the time I was like, this is great. Like I don't need any of the other stuff. The PSA stuff is really cool. But I was perfectly fine with the sit down, come place heel, all that other really good stuff there. So I was totally good with all of that.
Did you get in the bite suit at all?
I have gotten into a bite suit when I was with my mentor. He didn't do any of that. Mostly just like back tied the dog, and then we had like it was kind of like a flirt pole, but it was like a soft leather rag, like at like the end of
Mhm.
like a long line kind of. So just kind of getting started with that. Did some like other things, but for the most part, we had like a very small amount of time that we could spend together because he was starting up his own business. I was still in the corporate world, and he wasn't ready to take on anyone underneath him. And so it was like, oh, hey, like I have, some time after work. I'm going to like swing by where you're training. I'll come and help out. And it's one of those, like, you kind of put your reps in. And I think that anyone, especially someone that has gone through a rigorous program, I don't know if at Tom Rose, the students were required to like do any of the cleaning of facility spaces of like, the kennels
Mhm.
need cleaned out. You got to pick up the yard. This dog threw up. You got to go clean that, right? So obviously, I think that everyone that has gone through some sort of like rigorous training program is like, okay, so I have the student that I'm mentoring. First thing that you learn, here's how you clean a kennel. Here's how you go pick up dog poop. Here's how you do all these different things. And so also a part of my learning experience was kind of being put through the paces there of, hey, here's how you run a business. And sometimes the unattractive part of that is cleaning out kennels and picking up dog poop and all those other very glamorous sides of dog training that no one ever talks about, but is like arguably a very large part of our job.
It is, especially in the beginning when you're first
Yes.
starting out. Although that wasn't something that was a requirement for the students at the school. They just had to keep their own kennels and their own dogs clean, but they would have to clean the facility where the students were training every day. So at the end of the day, when class was done, we would do cleanup and everyone would disperse into their designated area. So some group would be cleaning the main training building, the small training building, the outside. So picking up poop and stuff out there if some student left it, because usually that would be the case. Often
Yeah.
it wasn't a client's dog unless it was in the play area. And being a dog trainer is a complex job. There is a lot to it. Now, I think it's great to learn about different areas and different disciplines within dog training. But the more I study different types of training, the more I continue to realize, and this is something that Michael Ellis says, the governing principles that are there for the basic obedience are the same ones that guide us in all other areas of dog training. It's
Yes.
like you have to get the dog engaged. You have to get them interested. You have to have clear communication system. You have to be consistent. Your timing has to be good. Your motivation and delivery of the rewards has to be worthwhile for the dog. It's like all the stuff is always the same and consistent. And it's just a matter of how well we can do each one of those steps.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned for a moment about the business side, and I know you're very passionate about the business side. And I think that's going to be something that would be very valuable to the audience, those that are listening. And I know there's a lot of people that listen that are in the process of starting their own dog training business. They're learning how to be a dog trainer. So, any sort of initial advice getting started, I think would be very valuable. And maybe some of the struggles that you had where you were starting the business, but you're still working in the corporate world. You still have to make ends meet. You still have to
Yes.
put food on the table. And then you're starting this new venture.
Yes. So, and I think that when people think of, and it's a very common pipeline that people find themselves in. I have a dog and the dog needs training, right? And more often than not, I think what happens is, yes, you can find a really good dog trainer near you that is really going to help revolutionize the life that you live with your dog for sure. But I think that there's a lot of times where people don't quite find the trainer that hits the mark for them, right? And whether that be virtual one-on-one, online courses, in-person training, whatever it may be, there's still something there left to be desired. And so I think it's very common, this pipeline of having a dog that is really struggling and you're struggling alongside with them, and you follow this pipeline of then becoming a dog trainer, right? I would say that the majority of dog trainers, if you were to ask them, line them all up, like you get 100 dog trainers together, 90 of them out of that 100 are going to say, oh, I became a dog trainer because I had a dog that was struggling and I needed to become the dog trainer for that dog. Before you knew it, friends and family were like, hey, can you train my dog? And then they referred me. And before you knew it, here I am 7 years later, I have my own business. So really, really common. So if you are our audience here on the other side of the screen and you are like, hey, that's me, I would like to start my own business, or I would like to train other people's dogs, I really love this whole dog training thing. I think there's a lot of really important parts there, but one of the most important things that people need to keep in mind is that when you become a dog trainer, you actually aren't really a dog trainer anymore. You are a business owner that just happens. Your service is training dogs. So yeah, you could say, hey, I am a dog trainer, but the meaning behind that is that you are a business owner. And so when you are a business owner, the really important things to kind of get started, people think, oh, I need to get clients so that way I can make money. Yeah, 100% for sure. But before you can even take the leash from someone else, you need to make sure that you have all of your legal ducks in a row. And it can be kind of terrifying as a business consultant for other dog trainers that I'm talking to people that have huge social media profiles. And from the outside looking in, I'm like, you are doing so great. You have so many clients. You've been doing this for several years. I'm like, this is so awesome. And then I sit down in a business consulting call with them and I'm scratching my head like, why aren't you reaching out for business consulting with me? You are doing awesome. And their back end is completely a mess and they don't have legal protections in place. What do I mean by legal protections? You do not have like an LLC. So your personal assets and then your business assets are all jumbled up together. So you don't have an LLC. You are not compliant with the IRS. You do not have contracts in place. You do not have any type of waivers. You don't have these core things set up before you should even be taking a leash from someone. Because when you take that leash from someone and you are advertising yourself, even if it's to just like friends or family, but if you get any monetary benefit from that, you are getting something from them that you are going to be, in trouble if something happens to that dog, or if that dog, happens to do something out in public when you're training with them, right? And so I think that for people that are wanting to get started, it can feel really exciting about that prospect of being your own business owner and going out and making an impact not only in dogs' lives but in the humans who take care of these dogs, the dog owners. But you need to make sure that you have your ducks in a row. So pump the brakes a little bit and do some research on how do you start up an LLC? How do you make sure that like if you're going to be doing certain services, are there any permits? Are there any zoning requirements? How about contracts? How about waivers? How about being, compliant with the IRS? Are you actual business entity that is actually recognized by the federal government? Kind of went off on a tangent there. It's something that I feel very passionate about, but hopefully that's
No, this is all great.
And maybe it's not, maybe people watching this are like, oh, this is going to be the big answer. And they're like, LLC, really? That's what you tell me? LLC, that's what you tell me? But it's so true. It's so true that I think that should really be the first step. From there comes, I think, the more exciting things about like developing your services and developing your branding and doing your website and starting up your social media and all these different things. But all of that means nothing if the IRS finds out about you, if something happens and you don't have business insurance. You know what I mean? So I would say that if I were to tell people, hey, you want to make that transition, make sure that you have those things in place first. It's super, super, super important. And the information is out there. I think it's something, quick Google search, and oh my God, you would find so many videos and articles of like, 10 steps that you need to do before starting your own business, regardless of what business it is. So
or even doing a deep research on one of the AI systems like Grok or ChatGPT. The one thing about those, which I've been telling people, because I use ChatGPT and Grok, I use it all the time, and I use deep research setting quite a bit. But what's starting to happen with these AI programs is because they'll go out and they'll reference things within the internet world and they'll
Yeah.
pull that information. That's what it's doing during that deep research that takes 15 to 25 minutes, give or take, depending on what you're looking up. But what it's starting to do now is it's starting to reference other AI material. So
Yeah.
it helps to tell the system to try to avoid AI produced content, because it could look at it and it could usually, with a pretty high level of accuracy, determine if something was completely written by AI.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about the foundational stuff that somebody needs to set up, it made me think about dog training as well and how
Yeah.
certain things are so similar. So with dog training, I look at it as 3 key events and then the management phase. So the management phase is everything we set up to make the day-to-day living with the dog super easy, to where these routines become habit, and then you never have to worry about a lot of little behavioral issues that people end up dealing with because they don't properly set everything up in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with what you're talking about right now. Now, setting up a business can be, I think, very daunting for a lot of people that haven't done that before.
Yeah.
And I know this because I've mentored a lot of trainers, and I always tell them, if you feel like you're at the point where you're good enough and you can start a business, do it. It's really rewarding. And if they're nervous about it, okay, continue working for somebody else for a while, but it's not as intimidating as I think a lot of people think. It just takes the time to sit down and do it. Now,
Yes.
getting things set up like an LLC, or if they want to do a C Corps or something like that, or an S Corps, what's the best way to determine what's best for their business? I think most dog trainers are just going to need an LLC if they're doing the basic business. But then also, what are some strategies that they can start doing to come up with the logo design? How can they build a website if they don't know how to build a website? What's the best way to hire someone to do the website? How do they get the contracts made? Is it as easy as just telling ChatGPT to write the contract? But then would it be smart to take that to a lawyer and just have them confirm that everything does follow the legal requirements for the state in which they're operating in? What's the easiest way when it comes to doing things like SEO? Or do you think SEO is important if they're doing marketing? I think all these things will be really valuable for people listening that want to do this. Because again, I think it is very intimidating and scary. But once you kind of know how, it clears the fog and opens the path to them.
Yes, definitely. And you asked some really good questions, a lot of them, but some very good questions. And I will say that I think starting your own business and also training dogs have so much overlap, as most things in life do. And the overlap being that dog training can feel really overwhelming, and it can feel like sometimes when you take a look at it almost like an insurmountable task, because it's multifaceted. And so while you're doing one thing, you also need to be working on another thing. Like, for example, like you have a dog that isn't food motivated, right? But you're having a lot of these behavioral issues. And so while you're working on transitioning from free feeding into a more structured feeding schedule, and also building more food motivation and also engagement, simultaneously, you also need to be working on the structure within your home. And you need to be working on your own handler mechanics with your leash, with your food handling, with your timing, with your verbal markers. Speaking of verbal markers, you need to start doing that with the dog. And it's all of these different things that I can feel like, oh God, like, oh, this is so much. And just that, you have to know all of that. But if you only know like parts and pieces, and the big thing is that your dog is lunging and barking and growling and snapping on a walk, that it can feel very overwhelming. And so the same thing with starting a business, of like the SEO, the branding, the website, the contracts, the everything that's going on. And it can feel like, oh my gosh, like it's very similar, right? And so the thing that I'll say is that there's two things, is that one, having clarity in your action plan, regardless of what it is. Health and fitness, if you just walk into a gym right now and you've never been in a gym, you're going to look around at all that equipment and be like, what the? And you're going to be like, thank God I got that 7-day free pass, because I ain't coming back here again. I don't know what I'm doing, right? So same thing with nutrition. And you're like, this is marketed as healthy, but like I flip this over and it says that it has 520 calories and it has 17 grams of fat. Like, is this actually healthy? Is this just marketing? So everything that you are doing that feels really overwhelming, it's really important that you have a very systematic and process oriented game plan that is tangible. Like I strongly encourage people of like, if you do not know your plan well enough that you can take it out of your brain and you can write it on a piece of paper, you can write it on a whiteboard, you can type it into a Google Doc or something and print it out, you do not know that process well enough. And you need to get that in order to actually start. Because once you have clarity in the plan, you're just like, boom, 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 boom. And then you can go ahead and get it done. Now, a lot of people listening are going to be like, okay, but like I can't even come up with a plan. So how do I get there? And it's either going to be leveraging AI, which is great, which you already touched on that, which I love that. And you gave some really good, valuable advice that people don't even realize that, AI is referencing other AI. And so
Right.
it's just a bunch of AI stuff being generated. But also leaning on resources that are available. The thing about today's day and age, whether it be starting your own business or also with dog training, is that there are low cost resources that are available
Mm-hmm.
at your fingertips. And so being able to get into someone's school community, into their online learning platform, into a virtual group class, into whatever. So actually paying for the professional help, because the thing is, do you want to trade your time for money or your money for time? And with the students that I mentor, I tell them that very early. And I say, hey, as a business owner, you need to be very realistic of like, if you don't have the income right now to pay someone to edit your social media videos, or for you to or to schedule them for you, or to build your website, or to do all these different things, then you need to learn how to do that. And that requires time in order to do that. And if you have time, that's great. You get to keep that money, or vice versa, right? And so for things like, starting up your own business, lean on people. You just mentioned that you do mentorship and different things like that. So how can people work with you if they want to, start their own business? I'm sure you have some resources, or I have resources, or there's a ton of people actually that have, starting up a dog training business. Well, maybe not like a ton, but it's starting to become more popular. And it's, leaning on professionals in order to help you get there. Because even if you do have a timeline laid out in front of you, the big question is this timeline accurate? Is this a timeline, one that I created, maybe with the help of AI, but is this actually what is the most important thing? And I think that's something that AI may never be able to truly replicate, is that you and I have learned experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have been training dogs since, gosh, Nate, how long have you been training dogs for?
2012.
Yeah, since two. I can't do math very fast, but I know that that's a long time, right? So if you've been training dogs since 2012, you have a lot of learned experience.
Mm-hmm.
Something that an AI model, no matter how hard it tries, it has never stood in front of an owner who is at their wits' end, literally in tears. I'm sure you have had clients who
Mm-hmm.
have been in tears in front of you of
Of
just like,
course.
love my dog so much, but I think I'm going to have to either give the dog away, euthanize the dog, or whatever it may be. And, and navigate through that, not only with the owner, but also with the dog. ChatGPT, Claude, Gronk, whatever, will never be able to have that experience and be able to teach someone else of like, hey, this timeline looks really good, but at this point here, you actually need to do these other things first, because when you reach that point where the owner tears in front of you, dog trying to eat you, here's how you are going to navigate that situation. And so, yeah, so long story short, I'm going to digress back to the main point, because I said a whole bunch of different things. I didn't succinctly answer some of your questions because I lost the plot along the way. But to succinctly answer it, is that you need to have like a framework of what are everything that I need to get done in this timeline. If you don't know how to do that, work with someone that can tell you what to do, so that way that timeline will be accurate and that timeline will be correct. And to further answer your question, I think a good point before you start investing into a professional, leverage AI. Definitely do
Mm-hmm.
that. Kind of come up with something, do what you can with that, and then go ahead and supplement and bring someone else in, pay them for an hour of their time. But instead of paying them for like a huge program or something like that, if you're like, hey, I'm going to start my own business, here's my game plan, can you look over this? I used AI to help me. Someone can come in, yes, no, maybe, move this here, move this down here, don't need that, whatever, stamp of approval, full send, God be with you. Yeah, I think that that's kind of like the important thing. But from all those things that you said, what are some of the more specific things that I can answer from there?
Yeah, and anyone who's starting, they're going to be able to adjust as they progress. Now, you were saying something about a timeline, and I'm kind of curious what you mean by that, because when I'm working with someone such as their own dog or their business, I kind of give the same advice for both. Meaning, or for an example, with dog training, and this is something I spoke about with Omar von Muller, the guy who does all the painting and everything. Having goals for a dog is really great, like long-term goals. But sometimes where we run into issues is where we have short-term goals, where we bring a dog out for one session and we want to accomplish something in that session. And then sometimes when the dog's not doing it, we get frustrated, and that frustration comes out in the training. And now we've just pushed the training back a few steps instead of going forward. So looking at long-term goals, not those immediate short ones. Okay, what is my long-term goal? Maybe I want to compete. Maybe I want to do AKC or IGP with my personal dogs. But what is my daily goal? Just getting them out and working with them each day, playing with them each day, building the relationship, and eventually we'll get there. And I kind of look at business the same way. Maybe one of the reasons why I'm not the best business person, but having the big picture of what we want to do, writing out a full plan, just like you said, and just try to hit a little bit of it each day. It makes me think about one of my favorite quotes. It's an old Stoic philosophy quote, I think from, I can't recall the name. It might be Nino or something like that. But the quote is, well-being is realized in small steps, but it's no small thing.
Yeah.
So if we just get a little bit at a time. So we kind of talked about the surrounding management, and I think people could go into ChatGPT, Grok, whatever, and get a list and start checking the box. Okay, I set up the LLC, and people can do that using different services. There's all kinds of services out there now, or they can hire an accountant or lawyer to do it, whatever they want to do. Same thing with the contracts, the logo, the website. And there are lots of resources, as you were saying as well. So I don't know if you use things like Upwork, but I love Upwork. I use Upwork all the time. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, Upwork and also Fiverr, I think, are
Yeah.
really good places to start if you need to outsource certain things. Like, for example, we had talked about like SEO or building a logo or your brand profile and all of those different things. If you are not confident in that, which I mean, unless you are someone that's already coming from that background, and then you're
Right.
going to be like, I'm going to take all of that and bring that into dog training. Like, for example, I got my degree in business marketing and in advertising. I'm able to bring that in. And then my, corporate career was in sales, marketing, advertising, and recruitment. I was able to bring that in. So if you don't have a business background, if you don't have a graphic design background, you were mentioning that you had some experience with, like video editing or, like you're a very creative person in that sense, you're able to bring that in. But if you don't have that, then definitely leveraging places like Fiverr, like Upwork, 99 Designs is another one as well. I think is a really good place to kind of be like, hey, I'm not an expert in this. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the same thing with like getting your LLC started. There's a ton of different, places that can help you with that, either in person or also just like online as well. You can, there's Zen Business, there's LegalZoom, there's, yeah, those ones are the first ones that come to mind, and then I'm blanking on the rest of them. But there are different, companies that can go ahead and help you with those different things, because they are really important things to do. And maybe you would know this better than other people, but sometimes it can cost you a lot more in the long run if you don't have those things established really well when you first start. If you don't have your branding and your logo and your website, and you have, your website SEO optimized, and you understand social media, all those different things, you can, and you're like, no, I'm going to figure it all out myself. You can, but if it's not done well, or if it's not done correctly, you could really pay for that, 2-3 years down the line. And then trying to backtrack after all of it, you're kind of like, oh God, like maybe it's not even worth continuing more. Like there's this often this sense of hopelessness that, when people are like, oh, I need to like redo all of this, and then they get overwhelmed and they're like, oh, is this even worth doing? Like, I don't know, like I'll just like continue to struggle through. So sometimes doing those different things, like you said, outsourcing, it can be really valuable to do. But sometimes people, it needs to be like they need to experience the challenge of doing something on their own first before they'll take that advice. I don't know if you've kind of experienced that. Maybe sometimes with dog owners, they're like, hey, like invest into this, like do like a private training session or do a board and train. They're like, no, I think I'll figure it out. And then you don't hear from them for a while. And then you hear from them
Yeah.
12 months later, 2 years later, and they're like, so we tried to do the dog training ourselves. Unfortunately, Fluffy's reactivity is even worse now. And we're like, it's okay. We'll help you out. But yeah, sometimes it's better to invest into making sure it's done right the first time.
Yeah. And it's very stressful too. I mean, you made some good points there. And when someone is starting out, it's tough to start working for you don't know how many hours with the possibility of not getting anything back from it. I mean,
Yes.
that's very difficult. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you are going to work so many hours where you don't know if the hours you're putting in is going to have a return on that investment.
Yeah.
But that is part of the learning process. And if you take it as part of the learning journey, then it's not as difficult when dealing with it. And you mentioned 99 Design. So I was a compositor before I got into dog training. So basically what I would do is I would composite videos together, but I also did graphic design, and I helped a lot of trainers get their logos. And what I would do, because a lot of them would be on a budget when they're first starting out, and this was before AI. Now you can go on things like Google Banana and have it come up with at least a concept and an idea, and then you can hire someone to fix it and tweak it so it looks exactly the way that you want. But the hardest part, I think, for things like creating a nice website or creating a nice logo is not the actual creation part, but it's the creative part. It's the thinking of the design and how you want it to look and the branding. And so what I had people do that I was helping them with their logos is I would send them to 99 design contests. And I would say, just look at all the completed logos and find one that you like the feel of. It doesn't even have to be dog training related. And then we'll take that and we'll change it where it's unique enough that it's not a copy, but it is, in a sense, an inspiration to create the logo that they want. And again, they can do something like that now. And I'm sure you could take it into something like Google Banana and say, hey, make this look like a dog training logo, change this so it looks like this, take out the person flexing if it's a fitness gym one and put a dog there with a happy smile. Let's see how that looks, right? And so now I want to cover, if you don't mind, kind of the A to Z rapidly of a business. So let's look at the 5 main parts. We have the product or the service, and then we have marketing, which you have a lot of experience in. Then we have sales, then we have fulfillment, and we have financing. So when someone's first starting out, before they can even create their website, they have to come up with the services that they're going to be able to provide. What's the best way of doing the research and creating a product or service that's going to be something that will hold up within the competitive market, and they can make money off of it, so they're not selling themselves short and they're doing a lot of work, but they're not making enough money to grow, but also to charge enough to where they feel comfortable and confident that they can charge that without getting additional anxiety from feeling like they're charging too much.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so this could be controversial, but I do feel very strongly about it. I tell my students and other, people that I'm doing consulting with, do not be the Walmart of dog training. Don't do it. You are going to burn yourself out. What do I mean by don't be the Walmart of dog training? Many times when I'm sitting down in a consulting call, the very common thing is that they are burnt out and they are even questioning if they even want to continue in their business. Or it's not that they are questioning it, they want to continue, but something has got to change. And so when I sit down and I look at their entire business, I do a deep dive of their website, their socials, like their back-end systems and processes and how things are optimized or many cases not optimized. And I'm looking at all of these different things. And another thing that I have come to ask over the past couple of years is, what is your weekly schedule like? And also, what is a daily schedule look like for you? What does an average day look like? So many dog trainers are absolutely just run ragged. They don't even have time to eat at all. Why? Because they got private lessons, they got board and train dogs, they got boarding dogs. They're going to do a pack hike as well. They have day train dogs. They also have their own personal dog, which they are pursuing PSA, IG, whatever it may be. And so they have, and then they have a relationship. They like a romantic relationship. They have friendships and family and everything like that. And in between all of that, where do you have time for innovation of your business, for time for you to be creative, for time for you to systematize and optimize your business? You don't, right? And what happens is that because you are trying to be the Walmart of everything and you don't price yourself because you don't value the transformation that you can provide to the lives of dogs and also to their owners as well. So you're pricing everything very cheap. So that way people will be like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll do it. And then you're like, okay, so I got that. But then if I offer all these other things, I can go like this all day, every day. But then at the end of the day, you just have a whole bunch of change that's running through your hands instead of one nice big stack of a lot of dollar bills, right? And you're nice and relaxed and confident. So don't be the Walmart of dog training. So when you are looking at the services that are available, I kind of, laundry listed some of them off. One of the things that you want to do is you want to look at your ideal lifestyle, right? And not ideal lifestyle on your most energetic and your most happiest and enthusiastic of days. No, 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 no. I want you to look at how you want your life to be when you are sick as a dog, when you are, when things just, it's really rainy outside, it's cold, you don't feel good, you're super tired, all those different things. What do you want to be doing on that day? And you can't say, oh, I don't want to work at all. No, you got to work. But do you want to train in your pajamas out in your garage with a board and train dog? Do you want to meet up with private lesson clients? Do you want to go and grab a dog from a client's home, take them out, train with them, put them back into their home? What does it look like on your, what is your ideal day on your worst day, right? And then I would recommend looking at services. So that's one thing, but also looking at what is your current availability. A lot of people they like the ideas of day trains, they like the ideas of board and trains, but they live in a townhome or they live in an apartment, right? You are going to have to be forced to either have a lot of dogs in a really small space. And when you cannot get distance from yourself and from your dogs that are living in your home 24/7, that are whining, that are barking, that you gotta train, and there's dog hair everywhere, you just constantly feel this kind of back burner of anxiety, like this low buzz at any given point in time. And you wake up in the middle of the night frantically checking the cameras, or that there's a dog barking that woke you up. You don't get very good sleep, which means that you're not going to eat. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole. What I'm trying to say is,
this is all very good stuff, and it's very true. I mean, as you're saying these things, I'm visualizing all the times I was doing the exact same thing you're saying. One dog barks, all the dog barks. Now I'm getting up. I'm not getting any sleep. I wake up in the morning. I'm pottying and rotating dogs. Clients are calling. I'm trying to tell them that we're doing the same stuff we did yesterday. Oh, crap. I need to finish this group because I got a lesson I have to go to.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's really tough. And so obviously imagine how you ideally want your day to be, but also be really realistic about your lifestyle too. If your ideal day is I want to do board and trains, but baby, you live in an apartment, honey, I don't think that you can do board and trains, especially if you're going to do any behavior modification. You trying to get dogs in and out, there's probably hella reactive dogs. There's probably really reactive dogs that are in your apartment complex, and that could undo a lot of your training. So it's okay, so maybe you can only, don't try to how is that saying, force a square peg into a round hole, right? Don't try and be hey, I do board and trains and I do 3 dogs and you live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Don't do that, right? So first, take a look at those things. Okay, now you have it. I tell people, whittle it down to 3 primary services, okay? Whittle it down to 3, but you're going to have one that's going to be your primary CTA your call to action that is going to drive and funnel all of your traffic from social media, from your website, from your freebie lead magnets, from your email marketing, from your whatever it may be. Book a free consultation for this one service, and you're going to get really good at that one service. It's going to be the creme de la creme of your training business. And you're going
Is there one you would recommend?
No,
Like,
because
what's the best one for that?
No, it totally just depends on like the person, where you live, all those different things. I think that the easiest barrier to entry is going to be private lessons. Why?
Right.
Because I think that for dog owners, if you were to step into your ideal client avatar as a dog owner, when they think about dog training, more often than not, unless you have been previously exposed to dog training, more often than not, when you think of dog training, you think of a trainer comes to my house, or I go to a trainer, I work with them for an hour, I do the thing, I meet up with them in a week or something like that, right? So I think it's going to be easier to sell that because that's kind of what people already think about dog training anyway. You know what I mean? So I think that is the easiest. But when you find those three, now you're going to sit down on your laptop, put your phone in another room. You're going to open up a Google Sheet, and you're going to open up another tab of Google Maps, and you're going to do dog training near me. And when dog training near me, you're going to put that within about like a 40 to 50 mile radius. And you're going to go through and you're going to put the business name. You're going to put a link to their website. You're going to put the services that they offer, and then the prices that they offer, and any service differentiators. So like, what are some of the bonuses that they get? Lifetime access to group walks, equipment included, whatever. And you're just going to go through, boom, 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 and then go ahead and fill that in, and then go ahead and see, okay, this is what people are on average are charging for this product or service, taking into account the differentiating factors that they have of the equipment, free lifetime touch-up, whatever it may be. But then you're going to be able to see, what does my competition look like, and what are they pricing that at? Now, here's the key thing, where a lot of dog trainers, because they have such a passion for doing dog training, you have mentioned this, I myself have definitely been there, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I really want to help them. And they're talking about money stuff. Money makes a lot of people uncomfortable, right? And a lot of us are already in scarcity mindset. And so we're like, oh, no, I'll just help you. You know, like I'll just do this free session first. And if you like it, then you could do like another one. What do all dog trainers do in that first session? It's supposed to be an hour, goes into an hour and a half, info dump on them. And and it's just like, you know, and then they never sign up for the package, right? Anyway, all that being said, so I break the services into a couple of different categories. So you are a dog trainer who has trained your own dog. You have maybe helped some of your friends and family, but that's kind of it, right? You need more reps. That's what you need. You need a lot more reps, okay? You are going to take the average of all of the different prices from those services around you, and you are going to undercut all of that and increase the value that you are going to provide. So is the equipment going to be included? Free touch-up lessons? Do you have like an online learning platform where people can, you know, go in and reference videos? Are you going to have free pack walks? Boarding is available, whatever it may be. And then you are going to go ahead and undercut there. So that's, you know, one of our different categories of an aspiring dog trainer. The second category is going to be,
and that's so they can get more reps in. So reps. They're trying to provide more, higher value, less price to get more reps.
To get more reps, build up your social media. You don't have anything on your website. You don't have any reviews. You don't have anything at all. And so you are going to make those clients count. When you get in front of those clients, and let's go ahead and pretend $100 an hour for a one-off private session. Okay. So you're going to go out there and you're going to be, hey, I'm going to do $75 per hour. And you are going to also have some of these value differentiating things. You need to make that 1 hour count. You need to get like a media waiver and be like, hey, I'm going to film our session. I'm going to take photos and videos. So that way you have something you can display on your website. You can put into some sort of like either a lead magnet or onto your social media, whatever it is. But you need to go ahead and start developing content, because that is the expectation of consumers nowadays, especially with dog training. It's so visual. Can you actually do the things that you say that you can do, right? Like, we don't just want stock photos of come train with us, email Dobkins@gmail.com, right? Like, people are expecting more nowadays, right? And so you're going to make that count. And that's why you're going to price it lower. And the thing I always tell people, if you are in that category and you're going to intentionally price things lower in order to get more reps in and to be able to actually have proof of concept, social proof, hey, I can actually train dogs, that you need to have an exit plan at some point. Because here's the thing, is that a lot of people get really comfortable at like, oh, I'm going to do $75 an hour. And then 3 months go by, 12 months go by, 2 years go by, and suddenly you're still at that $75 per hour for a one-off training session, right? So you need to have an exit plan of, when am I going to raise my prices? How am I going to communicate that to future clients? How am I going to handle that, et cetera, right? And also, have you been good about actually getting all of that social proof that you can go ahead and build your social media, build your website, build your email marketing, so that way you can actually prove that to people, like, I can do what I say that I can do. So making sure that you have an exit plan. But if you are someone that was the first category, but if you are in that second category of, I've trained my own dog, I've trained friends and family, and I've also been referred to other people, right? And if, for the most part, pretty much any dog that's dropped off at my feet, pretty confident that I could train that dog, right? Maybe you worked at a facility before, right? And so then when you do all of that research and you're looking at your Google sheet and you're taking the average of those different services, the ones that you want to do, then at that point, you can probably just charge the exact same thing that everyone else is doing. And I would encourage you, because you still don't have a lot of that social proof and everything, you're going to add more value. So pack walks, boarding, touch-up lessons, resources, go home handbook, whatever it may be, you're going to add something else to it. So that way, when people have their different tabs open, as a dog owner, you have different tabs open and they go, okay, this dog trainer, this is this much, and I don't get anything else. This dog trainer, I get the exact same thing, but I also get this, 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 and this. It makes that choice so much easier for them, right? And especially because dog owners are rarely making that decision on their own. And that's a whole
are you familiar with the value equation? I'm not sure if it was created by Alex Hormozi, but I learned it from his book, $100 Million Offers. Are you familiar with it?
Oh my gosh, I read that. Actually, I don't know if it was that book. I'm familiar with Alex Hormozi, but not with that equation. But you should bless us all with that.
Well, it's right here. So I just pulled it up. So on the very top, you see dream outcome. So for us, that's going to be the client that they either want their dog to listen to them or they don't want their dog doing nonsense. And that's kind of how I break down dog training. If we look at the two main issues, obedience and behavioral, well, what is that? Obedience, they're not listening. Behavioral, they're doing stuff we don't want. Okay, straightforward. And then the next side, and some of the things that you said hit on this, the perceived likelihood of achievement. Now they want to see social proof. They want to see the content. They want to see videos. They want to see you actually training and working with dogs. And then right under that, this is where it gets tricky. And I was actually talking with Jamie, the dog trainer, the other day from Australia, and we were talking about this. Because if we want to increase the value, we decrease the time and delay, and then we decrease the effort and sacrifice. This is why things like Netflix did so well, or liposuction tends to do very well. It's easier to do that than to go to a gym and get the right amount of sleep and reduce stress and eat the right food. So, but with dog training, that's difficult to do. Going back up to the perceived likelihood of achievement, though, how do we get more reviews? Do you have a certain strategy for that? Is it something as simple as, hey, just asking them if they'll write the review, putting it in the email, or having some sort of automated system that gives them notifications? I see you nodding your head.
There's definitely like a lot of different strategies, but the worst strategy is just like, hey, if you really enjoyed our, like, training with me, or like me training your dog, if you don't mind leaving me a review, right? People got a whole bunch of stuff going on. They're just happy that the dog training is done. They feel a sense of relief. Awesome. Will some people do it? Sure. But you need to make it stupid, simple, easy, right? And so that means that you should provide something to them. So there's a lot of different ways. One of them, provide something to them that is going to be crucial for their success after the training is already done. Is that a training tracker? Is that a go home handbook? Is that a video library? Whatever it may be. And then you are going to make it really easy that links them specifically to your review page. So if you have like a Google My Business page or something like that, you're going to have the link. So that way in a QR code, if you present to them like an actual go home handbook, I always encourage my students to actually go and print out their go home handbook. You're going to have a QR code, and then you're going to have it in there also in the email that you send them a digital copy of their go home handbook. So that way they can go ahead and either click the link or they can scan the QR code, write you a review right there, right? Or if you're meeting up in person, let's go ahead and say, for example, what I would recommend is if you get like those, I always say this wrong. They're not NFC and NFC tags. I don't know, but they're like the ones that you can like tap your phone to, and then it will go ahead and like run an automation, or like a lot of people like do like smart home automation and different things like that. If you get one of these, but in a card format, you can get them on Amazon. They're like pack of 50 for like $7 or something like that, right? And then you go ahead and program it. So that way, when someone taps their phone to it, it brings up Google My Business. They can go ahead and leave a review right there. So their last lesson, you're like, oh my gosh, thank you guys so much for all this training. It was such a blessing. I almost said pleasure and blessing at the same time. Blessing to work with you and Fluffy. Would you guys mind leaving me a review? You can go ahead and tap this card right here. And then just go ahead and like, just like how your experience went and everything like that. And you just like have it right there. Tap their phone, and then it go ahead and it just like pops up there. So you could do something as simple as that, but don't just say, thank you guys so much. Would you mind leaving me a review? They're going to get into their car, drive home. Oh my gosh, I forgot to pick up chicken on the way home. I got to go review. Gone. Like they're not thinking about that. Maybe in the middle of the night when they can't sleep 2 months later, but it's in the middle of the night. They're going to leave a review. No, they're not. Right. So, for different things like that, there's a lot of different ways. But I would say making it as easy for them as possible. If they have to go and look up your business to go ahead and do it, the friction, the barrier to entry is too high, right? Especially nowadays when like dopamine is literally at just a thumb swipe up on TikTok or on Instagram. Like they would much rather do that than try and, figure out your, Google My Business page and how to leave a review and stuff. You know what I mean? So that's what I would say if you're trying to like get more social proof and do things specifically like review wise, whether that be Yelp. I recommend Google. I think that's like, especially with SEO things considered, I think Google is probably the best way for people to leave reviews and, kind of monitor your business.
I agree. And I do a lot of the same things. So the manual that I sell on Amazon, I never expected to sell it, but it's been selling more and more because of the YouTube channel. And I had to update it 3 times because when I originally wrote it, I just wanted to give perceived value.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it as a go home manual, as a guideline for people that finish training so I can give them something and then ask for something in return.
Yeah.
So in the email after we finished the training, I would do all the stuff that you said, thank them and all that, nice stuff. And then at the bottom, I would say, I've attached a free copy that I'm gifting you, something like that. But I would say gifting you a free copy of my dog training manual. And the fact that I was selling it gave it perceived value instead of like, oh, you just give this away to everybody. And then after that, I would ask for a review. And just by adding that in the email, it greatly increased the percentage. And then asking for the review, you have to have the link that takes them directly to it. Like you said, you remove as many barriers as possible. And I recently learned that there's now lots of programs that you get it set up within your business and they'll send automatic reminders. So they'll send the emails or they'll send text messages. And sometimes people need to hear it 3, 4, 5 times before they actually go ahead and write the review because it's not important to them.
Yep.
But it's very important for us. And reviews matter more and more too, because like the younger generation, they not only will look at the reviews, but they'll look at to see what the most recent reviews are.
Yes.
So you have to be consistent getting those in constantly. Yes. Is there anything else about the service or product section before we move on to the marketing that you want to add?
I think that like because this is more our conversation has been like so geared towards people who are thinking about entering this new phase of their life and starting their own business. I think that is a good place to kind of leave that, because there is a lot more, but then that's kind of like same thing like in dog training. It's like, here's like the overview. If like you have a dog that's
Yeah.
counter surfing, let's say, for example, can we get into a lot of the minutia? Sure, but we're really going to overwhelm the dog owner. So for right now, we're just going to leave it as, we're going to keep a leash on the dog. So for right now, do your research, figure out what are the services. You're going to have a top 3, then you're going to have a primary one that you're going to do. You're going to find all of the dog training businesses near you, put it into a Google sheet, find the average, and then choose your prices from there, and adding more value so that way you differentiate, so that way people go, of course I'm going to choose them. Look at how much value they give me, right? So yeah.
And then having an action plan to increase the price later as they've proven that they're able to do the job. So they've increased the perceived likelihood of achievement by increasing the value, lowering the price, putting in the reps, getting the reviews, then increasing the price to the value in which they're offering. I think that's really great. There was something else I wanted to ask. Yes, money. Because you mentioned money is very difficult for people in the beginning to ask. It's easy when you work for somebody and you're just up there at the cash register and it's like, okay, here I'm just doing my job. But when it is your own business, what's the best ways from your experience for them to take payment, to ask for payment? How do they do it in a way that's professional, where they don't feel weird or awkward about it? And what sort of payment options are best? And do you provide receipts all the time, or do you only provide receipts when the client asks? Do you always make it for yourself for the record books when we get to the finances? I know I'm asking a lot of stuff here, so whatever you can provide.
I'm like trying to like take in the question, and then I can try to like categorize it in my brain and like hold on to it. I have such bad raging ADHD. So as soon as someone asks me a question, my brain goes, I have the answer to that. Here's the response. And then another question, and my brain's like, here's this response to that. And I'm like, but what about this one? Your brain is like, not important anymore. We're going to keep going from here. So
I do the same thing. I do the exact same thing. Yeah, sorry. I think I asked like 5 questions in that one question, but
you know what's so funny is that like, I am so bad at that, but I do that to other people too. And I'm like, why do I do that? But to kind of like answer that. So I also kind of feel a little bit passionate about this as well. So when it comes to accepting money into your business, and that means charging people, right? There's 2 aspects to it. The first one is also just like thinking to yourself and doing the inner work and asking yourself, if you have a problem with it, why do I not feel like I am worthy of charging for this product or service? And really digging deep into that and feeling uncomfortable in that sense of like asking for someone for money. Why does that feel weird to me, right? Like, why do I feel bad about charging people for that? And for some people, it's because maybe they grew up in a scarcity mindset. So maybe they grew up and they didn't have a lot of income. So this one was my challenge to overcome. I grew up very poor. And so for me, anything about money, it was very sensitive, and we don't talk about money, right? And so that can be like really hard. And then I think about other people, and especially during conversations like a phone consultation or something like that. And, we're going back and forth. Here's the product, here's the service. We talk about the prices. And then they're like, oh, I don't know if I can really, do that much. Do you have payment plans? So right then you clock it and you're like, okay, so they don't have a lot of income, right? And so then that makes you feel bad charging for that. And usually that stems from you take on that burden yourself. I usually find this with, with my women, consulting clients and my mentorship students. They take on that burden themselves, and they feel the need to ease that anxiety from someone else. They're like, I have the power to solve this for them. Why don't I just come in and just solve it for them? Right. I can do it. Why don't I? Right. And especially if you can identify, and you would be like, if I was in their shoes, man, I know what that's like to struggle with, being really tight on finances. And so that can feel really hard. So whatever it may be, people need to first identify, why do I feel like I'm not worthy? Is it because you don't think that you can actually make a change? And here's the thing about it. I know that this is like a little bit of a tangent, but when should you start charging for your services, right? Because before you even start, opening your own business, you've probably done some reps first to even decide, do I even like dog training? Am I even good at this, right? So you've done some of those different reps there. But the thing about it is that you should start charging for your services as a dog trainer when you don't have to be 10 steps ahead of someone. You don't need to have a focused heel. You don't need to have a recall off of someone in a bite suit. You don't need to be titled in agility or something like that. Are those things good to have? Sure. But you need to be just a couple of steps ahead of where they currently are. What is their pain point that they are at? And can you, for sure, bring them to the place that's a couple of steps ahead, right? You don't have to be super crazy and have trained thousands of dogs over the past 10 years, but can you reach them, or can you help them reach that next rung, right? And that's when you should start charging for your services. It needs to be proportionate to the actual transformation. So that's the thing. Ask yourself, can I actually transform these people's lives? Can I make an impact? If the answer is yes, if all that you can do is teach a dog to walk on a leash, but oh, that person is struggling, I know I can do that, charge for that, right? And if you're just a one-trick pony, but that's all that you're selling, leash walking, right? Yeah, then go ahead and charge for that. And you should feel confident in doing that. So just kind of like a random tangent kind of there. But
There's a good book on that too. You're probably already familiar with it, The Psychology of Money.
I actually have not read that. No.
It's a very
But
short book. I mean, you could read it in a couple of days, but it's really good. And he just released another one, The Psychology of Spending or something like that. But in
yeah,
the book, The Psychology of Money, a lot of it comes down to the period of time in which somebody was born, what the
yes.
economy was like at that time. Same thing that you mentioned, what their childhood was like, how wealthy or how broke, if they have that scarcity mindset. And it plays a big role in how we treat and how we look at and how we deal with money. I think you'll find it very interesting. A lot of the things you were saying I was almost 99% sure you'd already read it.
No, but thank you so much for that recommendation. I am a huge bookworm. I'm constantly listening to audiobooks, so I'll definitely, any other book recommendations, I'm always about them. So, but kind of what we were talking about is that you have to identify that within yourself. The second thing is that this one also really pertained to me, and I have noticed that it has really helped my consulting clients and my mentorship students, is if your system for sending people invoices, because I think that that's usually like the expected mode of like paying for things. It's not usually like check or cash, even though it can be. I think a lot of times it is going to be invoices. If that process is a multi-step process and you yourself have to go through a lot of friction in order to send that invoice out. Example, I need to send an invoice to a client. What does that involve? Okay, I'm upstairs. I think about this. I need to send an invoice to a client. I have to go into my office. I need to turn on my laptop. I need to log in. I need to open up a browser. I need to go to Stripe. I need to create a contact. I then need to input all of the stuff for that contact, select the right service, and then I need to go ahead and email that out to the client, right? Instead, can you optimize that? So that way, after you get done with a consulting call or an in-person evaluation or whatever it is, and you send an email, can you have an email template that has a payment link? So that way it says, hey, if you want to go ahead and get started, here's the contract link. Go ahead and complete that. And here is the payment link. So go ahead and click here. Once you complete these two things, we'll go ahead and solidify the start date. There's nothing else. And it kind of removes yourself from that kind of. And I found that one, as someone that has really bad ADHD, and I'm so scatterbrained with things sometimes. Honestly, it's a miracle that I've gotten this far in life, that sometimes just having it like that, where I don't have to go through all these different steps, add them as a contact, select the service, do all these things, email that out, just a payment link, like right there. And then that's it. And it, better yet, it's in an email template, right? So I don't even have to sit there and even think about anything. There we go, invoice. And then we go ahead and get paid. So it kind of feels like it's, yeah, like I said, you kind of like remove yourself from it. So it doesn't like feel so awkward. The more awkward things is following up for payment. And that's when that's when your contract comes into play, which is, kind of a different conversation.
What's the program for the auto payment like that you could put in the email? Is there a certain program you're using or you recommend for that?
Stripe.
Oh, Stripe.
Stripe, yeah. Yeah. So that's what I recommend for people to use. I think that it's the easiest because it'll take like any card processor. Things like PayPal can I won't talk about PayPal, but I do not recommend PayPal.
A lot of people trust PayPal though, but they do have some pretty high fees.
They have some really high fees, and that's one of those things where even though it might be better on the consumer end, as a business owner, that exactly like the time that you spend needs to equate to food on the table and a roof over your head. It's not very friendly all of the time, for you. And so that's why it's like one of the reasons. Not all of the time, obviously, but I have definitely had like a board and train client paid through PayPal, and then I really needed that for rent at the time, and they just were like, "Hey, like, sorry, we're just gonna like hold on to this." I was like,
Mm,
I needed that $3,000 to pay rent. Like, please, like, why can't you give me my money?
yeah.
So that's where it's like, I know that a lot of people, or like things like Zelle and other things like that, people trust those different systems, but how easy is it on your side? So that's where it's like, Stripe is well known enough. And I think that it's also easy on the user interface as like a merchant, I guess you could say.
That's really great advice. Yeah, I mean, I always offer different payment options, but having something as simple as here it is in the email, and then you don't have to worry about it. I think you're right too. I think it takes a lot of pressure off of people because we do often feel awkward saying like, "All right, so how do you plan on paying for this?
Yeah.
You know how
Yeah.
much the lesson is, you know?"
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next part then is marketing. And I think marketing is something that a lot of people struggle with. Do they pay for marketing? Do they hire a company? Are they going to use Google ads? Should they do it on Facebook? Should they not do it at all and go for guerrilla marketing? Should they just put out a bunch of flyers and have business cards? What, from your experience, especially with someone who's starting off brand new, is the best strategy to start getting in clients and have a nice return on investment if they are spending money to get those initial clients, as well as something you mentioned earlier, their target market? So, what type
Yes.
of people do they want to market to? What is their ideal client?
Yeah, definitely. And I like that last part that you just put in, because that's actually what I was going to start with, is that a lot of your marketing is really going to depend on your ideal client avatar. Because if you are like, and especially like the area that you are servicing, let's say for example that you are based in Florida, and a lot of neighborhoods and places in Florida is a retirement type of community, right? And so, with that type of clientele that you are likely going to be surrounded with, especially, dog training. I mean, most of my clients aren't local, but I mean, they're for most beginning dog trainers, they are going to be local. Is a retirement community going to be on TikTok where you are creating content? I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna say no, right? And so you need to take a look at, hey, like what is the demographic of where I am? What type of services am I offering? If you're a dog trainer who's based in Florida, but maybe you are actually trying to do just like more online dog training, then yeah, then maybe focusing more on social media definitely makes sense, right? So kind of looking at your ideal audience, and then also choosing those different platforms that they are on. Are they going to be more on Facebook versus Instagram versus TikTok versus YouTube? And in some instances, should you have a presence everywhere? Definitely. But that can be really overwhelming for a beginner dog trainer that is just starting, right? And so just kind of looking at that first. And then the next question is, okay, do I pay money to run ads? And that is always the really big question when people think about marketing. So the thing about it is that a lot of times marketing and advertising are lumped into one thing. Marketing is typically going to be more organic. Advertising is always going to be about payment. And
Mm.
so are we going to do advertising where we're going to pay, or are we going to do marketing, which is making your lead magnets, your email newsletters, your SEO, which I mean can also be paid. So obviously there's going to be some overlap here. And then your social media content that you're just going to create, on Instagram and on TikTok, on YouTube, on Facebook, whatever it may be. And so if you are currently at a spot where you have a corporate job and you're making good enough money, right? Like you're making good money and you can actually allocate some. So that way, when you start your business, you have, a couple hundred of dollars to spend towards advertising of running, paid advertising, whatever it may be. Then go ahead and do that, right? Because you can like fast track it. If you need to get more eyeballs, which is attention, then yeah, ads are a really great way to do that. You can pay for attention. But if you don't have that income, then what you're left with is with organic marketing. And for that, honestly, I think every single business needs to be focused on organic marketing, especially with kind of the digital landscape of 2025 and moving on into the future and the rise of AI and everything like that. Everyone is looking, hey, what is your website? What is your social media? A lot of Gen Z, they're not going and looking at your website as the first thing. They're going and looking you up on TikTok. They're going and looking you up on Instagram or whatever it may be. And so I think that is going to be the really important, part is making sure that when you get started with marketing, that you start your social media presence, but also don't neglect the power of doing more in-person marketing as well and kind of doing like a more like canvassing sort of approach. So something that I first did when I kind of restarted my life and I started Team K9 training was that I printed off these tearaway flyers. And so I had like this flyer that I made just like in Canva. And it had like my logo, and then it had like some pain points on the flyer. Is your dog, pulling on the leash, jumping, barking, all these different things, and then a little blurb about my business. And then I had a QR code, and I had my not my email, but my web address on there, and they could go ahead and tear that off and they can go ahead and take it with them. And I went to Tractor Supply, I went to Starbucks, I went to Panera, I went to groomers, to vets, everything where they had a bulletin board. Just went to Staples and I printed off 100 of them. And then I just went around and I just like spent 2 days and I just thumbtack those everywhere that I went. And I asked permission first, make sure that you're doing that, asking permission first, that you can go ahead and do that. And the QR code that was on there, that they can scan it for a free phone consultation for dog training. And because I had my website address on there as well, they could go ahead and, look me up. And when they went to my website, I would have a pop-up that had a free lead magnet. So that way, when they went to my website, they're going to check me out before they do a free phone consultation, because that's kind of a big ask sometimes. And that's just like too much. And so they go there to figure out more, and then they get a free lead magnet, which entered them into an email automation nurture sequence. So that way, even if they didn't, they're like, oh yeah, maybe I should check this girl out for like training. And then they forget about it. A reminder in your inbox, a reminder in your inbox. And I just hit them with emails that had some value in them. But it all started when they, in order to get the lead magnet, they had to give me what? Their email address, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if I didn't get it from, them, scanning it while they were in Starbucks, or, they took it with them and they scanned it, then maybe, the end of the email sequence was about 2.5 months down the line when it ended, right? That they had all of those emails along the way, that my primary call to action was what? Free phone consultation. And so that was a really great way for me to go ahead and get some leads in really quickly. And, some people, I'm sure that a lot of people ended up, I would go and like check up on my, my tearaway flyers to see if I needed to put a new one up. Yeah, some of them were totally empty. And I was like, heck yeah, this is awesome. I should be getting leads any day now, right? But, sometimes people didn't. But you know what? Sometimes people messaged me a year, 2 years later, and they're like, oh, I'm so glad that I followed you. I just happened to, scan your QR code at Panera, a couple years ago. I was like, that's crazy, right? So it also helped with like growing my social media, because I didn't put anything about, hey, follow me on Instagram or anything like that. They just went and found me on Instagram. So also doing like in-person canvassing can be, really a good way to do that. I was a fan of the tearaway flyer. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say all the things that you said. So like the QR code for the phone call, how long were you offering these consultation calls, and how were you able to stick to that time and not go over? And then the pop-up on the website, like what website creator or platform are you using? Are you using WordPress? Do you hire someone to help with these things? The one that I've been wanting to start, and I honestly don't know the best way of doing it, is the like the newsletter campaign, because I don't want to just send out something that's generic AI written. I mean,
Yeah.
I use AI when I write. So I recently wrote an article, I haven't published it yet, on Michael Ellis's course on Sit Stay Learn, the dog training decoded.
Yeah.
And I went through the course twice. I watched it first because I just wanted to get all the information. Then I watched it again and took 28 pages of notes. And then I took those notes and I wrote the article. And I use ChatGPT and even Grok to be my editor, but I'm
Yeah.
still writing it because I want it to be quality. I don't just want to say, hey, write a review on this course, because it's not going to be anything remotely close to what I would actually say.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to send out a bunch of spam at the
Yeah.
same time, but I want to understand how to do something where we get that free lead magnet. And what's like a good example of a free lead magnet? Is it just like a copy of your manual or your step-by-step process to fixing potty training? Is it something really simple like that?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is my ADHD as well. So if you picked up anything I said, if you want to just take it and run with it, I think you know where I'm going with all the questions.
Yeah, definitely. So with the QR code, actually, like literally unto this day, and I started Team K9 training in August or September of 2021. If someone still has that QR code, they're still going to be able to book a call with me because it goes to a call scheduler. And so it's just like free board and train consultation. And so they can still use that now of like,
Is it Calendarly?
No, it's TidyCal.
What is it called?
It's pretty much like Calendly. I hate paying for subscriptions. It is the bane of my existence. If I can get something lifetime, I always do lifetime. So,
and that's what this is?
What was it?
And that's what this one offers?
Yes, TidyCal. It was
what is it called?
TidyCal, TIDYCAL.com. Yeah, TidyCal. So that's
Very
what
nice.
I use for all of it. And then I just like embed it in my website. So that way it's not like click here to book a call. It's like, no, I'm not even going to redirect you to a new page. You can, it's embedded into my webpage. You can go ahead and click there because the more clicks, anyway, I'm getting off topic. Anyway, so use that so that way people can go ahead and find a spot on my calendar. That requires people to have a level of organization with their Google Calendar. And I think that if someone didn't come from a corporate background, or maybe your corporate background didn't have you on a lot of meetings, and someone isn't used to updating their calendars and making sure that's reflected their day-to-day life, and they're consulting their calendar multiple times per day, you need to get on that ASAP. Like that is a very, very important, like there's hard skills in business and then there's soft skills. I would say that getting used to living inside of, for example, Google Calendar is the easiest and has the most integrations. That's more of like a soft skill. You need to start developing some of those different soft skills as a business owner. And so, so doing something like that, so that way they could see, okay, she isn't available on Wednesday, but she is available on Thursday, but only in between these times, I'm going to go ahead and snag that time, insert my information. I go ahead and give them a call, and then I go ahead and close the call. Why? Because I did several years in sales. So there we go. Just kidding.
And then how long is the call though? Would you do like a free 10-minute consultation? Is that, or 15 minutes?
Usually 30.
30? Yeah. And then how many are you doing? Because 30, that's a time commitment.
It is definitely a chunk of time. And that's where making sure that you have your calendar only available at certain times. Like, for example, if someone wanted to book a call with me, you cannot book a call before 11, because if I have board and trains and I go to the gym every single day, like there's a lot of things that I need to do in my morning before I sit down and do business. So anything that requires me to be on a phone call or in a meeting or something like that, you can only get me from 11 to 4. Like those are the only times that you can go ahead and get me, right? So having structure around your day. And so for me, at that time, I was like, I'm willing to take a risk, and time is your most valuable asset, especially as an entrepreneur, and be like, okay, I will invest 30 minutes into this person. If it's shorter, great. I got tons of other things that I can do, but I want to have 30 minutes that I can really nurture this client, especially because it was cold traffic, which means that they're going to have a lot more questions. If you're following me on social media or something like that, you know who I am, you know my training style, you know I use tools with a lot of dogs, you kind of like know me, so it's going to be really fast. But if it's cold traffic from Panera or Starbucks and you scan a QR code or something like that, You don't know who I am. What if you're not okay with using tools, right? Do I need to take some time to educate you on that, right? And really hold your hand through a couple of different things. So 30 minutes was like a good time. And I do have it set where I think that I can, my booking for a free board and train consultation is a maximum. I think now it's only two, but before I think I used to do 3 per day maximum. And my working hours were bigger before. I've switched a lot more because it used to be from like 9 until 6. I would have like people could book through that entire time. So it'd be like 30 minutes, like through there. Yeah.
And you would set the cap for 3, but now you have it set for 2. And
Honestly,
you
I think
tell
right
them,
now, yeah, sorry, it doesn't matter, but yeah, I had it set. I had it like capped at like how many that I could do in a day.
yeah, I did the same thing. I did 10-minute calls though, but I almost always went over.
Yes.
I have such a hard time because, they'll be in the middle of asking a question or I'm in the process of answering it. And I don't want to give them a half-ass response
Yeah.
or cheat them out of the information I feel like they need to know if they're going to be successful with whatever it is that we're talking about. How
Yeah.
did you develop the discipline to get to the time and stop before you go over and give the client data overload?
Yeah, good. Gosh, that is like such a hard one. And honestly, like I'm so thankful that I have such a huge sales background. Because when you do like, so I got started in business to business sales, like cold call, business to business sales, selling print marketing to college students, right? Like that's where I got started. Like that is like one of the hardest things that you can get started in sales. And then I went into like a sales manager sort of role. So I was pretty good at being able to like kind of get like the flow and the cadence of being able to do it. But the key is that I'm still not always great at only keeping to that 30-minute cap. So for every single meeting, I have a 15-minute buffer before another meeting can get scheduled. So that way it's not like, oh, I really got to rush this because I booked, only allocated 10 minutes for this. And then I have another call that's going to be 10 minutes. So I really got to hang up the phone or else I'm going to be late and unprofessional to the next one. So making sure that you have some buffer time in between all of your different meetings as well. So having caps and having buffer times is really important. But when it comes to making sure that you're fitting within that is really figuring out what are the important questions to ask. A lot of times when I am talking with other dog trainers and they are trying to really optimize their sales process, they are asking some very interesting questions. And I think it's because, well, with AI, you can probably have an outline that's a little bit more guided. But before, you probably went to a dog trainer's website or something like that, saw some sort of form of different questions that they asked, and were like, oh, I'll take these questions, and these are the things that I should be asking of my leads or something like that, right? Of like, oh, so what brand of dog food is your dog on, and how many cups per day do they eat? The dog's biting people. Why? No, do you need to know how? No, don't ask pertinent questions that are very guided that will help give you a really clear picture. And then you can easily identify these are why the dog is behaving the way that they are. And then tell that to the owner and then be able to formulate a plan of like, so here's what we're going to do in training, right? And so just kind of getting the flow and the cadence of that so that way you can guide the conversation so that way you can wrap up within that time period that you have. And for me, about 30 minutes is the magic number. Some of them go over if I have to do more like nurturing or if it's like more emotional. I usually find that those phone calls tend to go over because there's a lot of conversation from the lead, which is fine. It's good. Like, I want you to tell me how you're feeling so that way I can help you through that. But it does tend to go over. So those buffers are really important. So the key to staying in that window is ask pertinent questions, ask really guided questions that is what the owner says is impactful. You are asking that question because you need that answer, right? In order to get a feel for this, what is their pain points? What is their goal? And how can I help them achieve that? Or am I even a good fit for helping them achieve that? And that's the other thing that I would encourage people that are listening or watching to this is that not every single lead should turn into a customer. At the very beginning, it may kind of feel that way. And yeah, maybe you do need to have every single lead like really turn into a customer. But sometimes you are not going to be the right fit for a client. And most importantly, a client isn't going to be the right fit for you. And you can really avoid a lot of heartache with that, especially if you do choose to use training tools that not every single client is going to be a good fit for you. And that is okay. You can make the best, softest, most delicious chocolate chip cookies, and there is someone out there that despises chocolate chip cookies and they think they are disgusting, right? So that's okay. You're a chocolate chip cookie. Be a queen chocolate chip cookie, but not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay.
And so you wouldn't have a straight script, but you'd have more like a guideline that you would follow?
Yeah, it depends on who you are, right? As someone who has a lot of experience in sales, I kind of can have just like sort of like a guideline, like in my head at the very beginning. I did have something printed with like bullet points, but like for my mentorship students and stuff that have never done sales before, I have kind of like a script that they can go ahead and follow. And I have like mock conversations and actual real like training conversations that I've had with people so that they can kind of here's how a sales conversation goes. So I can close someone over the phone, right? And if it's not over the phone, you should kind of do the same thing in an in-person evaluation as well. If you're going out to people's homes to evaluate, you can kind of follow the same script as well.
And how does someone get past that feeling of not wanting to be, I don't want to be the scummy salesperson, right? I don't want to sell people on things. I want them to want the things that I offer because I offer great things. How
Yeah.
do you get someone past that mindset of, oh, I don't want to do sales, especially if they want to run their own business?
Yeah. I think that language plays a really important role in how we perceive things. And so when you say, "Oh, I have to do this sales call," and sales to you is a word in our language that has a negative connotation to you, yes, you are going to feel really salesy. If sales means to you, for example, sales for me has always been a mechanism of me sharing information and education of how I have something that can help you. I want to help you. I want to be of service to you. And I'm going to offer this to you. So I view sales as information sharing, and I'm offering something to you. And if you don't want it, that's okay, right? But a lot of times people see sales as like, take it, take it, take it, take it, right? And they're like
Mhm.
really just like, or like they're really trying to, get something from it, and they tie themselves to the end outcome too much. And the thing with sales is that sales is a lot of it is a numbers game, and a lot of it requires you to kind of let your ego die. You kind of have to let your ego die a little bit, because if you tie yourself too much into your business, then when someone says, "Oh, I don't think that's a right fit for me," people see it as they perceive it as a rejection of self. No, no, no. It's a rejection of, this is not the right time for me. Oh, my husband just got laid off from work, right? I thought that we would be able to afford this, but the prices are too much. It has nothing to do with the person. And so when people like take that too personally and they involve themselves too much, then they get really scared of sales. So you kind of need to remove yourself from it, and you have to position it as, I am of service to people. And simply all that sales is just like, you want to know more about my service? Here's all the information. I see that you have a problem. Here's how I'm going to fix it for you. This is the cost associated of it. And the thing about it is that people think that they shouldn't talk about price. But like when people get onto an evaluation or into a consultation, most of the time they want to know what the price is. Like, you got to tell them the
Mhm.
price. No one goes to Walmart and are shocked that there are prices there. What? I
Right.
have to pay for this? No, wild. It's like, yeah, of course there's going to be a price associated with it. So say it how it is, right?
Yeah,
Um,
you wouldn't be able to do it professionally if you couldn't charge a price.
and that is the difference in between having it be a hobby and having it be a profession. So people expect that when you advertise yourself or you market yourself, I am a professional, they go, okay, that means that you require payment in order for
Mhm.
this profession, because there's a higher skill set involved in the value that you are providing to me, I guess you could say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And going back to your, I think you would call it a sales funnel.
Yeah.
How do you do I don't remember the words that you used, but you said once they get in and then they're kind of in the pipeline, or you're sending them the email marketing campaign that you have? How do you get that stuff set up, especially for someone who's starting off and they're a one person team? Like,
Yeah.
how do I get it to where I'm sending out the newsletters and I have this automation in place and I have these magnets and this pop up? How do I do that?
Yes. So I'm going to give like a high level overview because I literally have like, this is like, I have a huge course that's like several hours long that I would take you to get through, where I walk you through how to do this. But essentially what you do is
Is
that
this the one that you have on Sit Stay Learn?
no, that Sit Stay Learn is like more of like a general broad overview of kind of everything. I have different courses that are more like guided. Like for example, I have a course that's like just on lead generation. I have another one just on social media, on website design, on these like specific things.
I might
So
have to get these courses.
yeah. Or well, we'll chat after this. So for doing like your email automation, right? So number one, you can either have it set up on your website where it's like a newsletter sort of thing, and people are going to subscribe willingly, and they're like, I want to have continuous emails from you, and you're going to position it as like, I'm going to send you, tidbits of value, right? Like little bite-sized little things, right? Or number two, which is the better one, is that I'm going to provide something free to you in exchange for your email address. Now, the free thing is going to be something fairly simple but impactful, right? And so things that I've done as lead magnets, for example, my 5 pillars of dog training. So I have my you're going to recognize 3 of these from Tom Rose, which is going to be your timing, your motivation, your consistency. I
Mhm.
have communication and I have relationship on mine. So I have these 5 pillars, and it's a mind map diagram, and it's like broken down like a lot of things. So I have my 5 pillars of dog training. My most popular one and the most impactful one is I wrote a short book. It's called Tethered Decompression from Chaos to Calm. It's actually on Amazon if people want to buy it. Like I I sent it off to the federal government, and I got a copyright for it and everything. Like I have a certificate somewhere. But I wrote that, but I offered that as a free ebook. It's literally just tethering your dog. Like that's it. But there's like 3 different phases of it. So I have that one. And then there's a ton of various things that I've created along the way. But essentially, so you have some sort of service, whether it be MailChimp, MailerLite, Kit, Brevo, SendFox, ConvertKit, whatever it may be. You have one of these email marketing platforms, and you have it set up where either you use a form from them, and then as soon as someone gives you their name and their email address, you set up an automation sequence, right? And so then they get put into this automation sequence, and then you have different times. So immediately they give you their email, and then immediately you send them their lead magnet into their email. So they are motivated to give you their correct email address, because sometimes people will try to give you a fake email, right? But if you want this, I'm going to send it directly to your inbox. So it gives them that. And then maybe a 24-hour or 48-hour time goes by, and that triggers the next email, right? And it kind of, you have to do this knife edge balance in between nurturing and providing value while also trying to upsell them into whatever it is this email nurturing sequence is. For me, it's my learning lab, which has like 25 courses for dog owners for $17.99 a month. So any lead magnet that you get from me, I'm going to try and upsell you into my learning lab, right? Because that's where I do all my stuff for dog owners. And so building it out from there. And the tricky thing that people miss is that when they leverage AI, they make it too impersonal in the way that like you wouldn't speak.
Mhm.
I'm very sarcastic. I'm very blunt. I am very systematic and process oriented. And I usually have a more like educational or informational sort of tone, right? And no matter what I use for AI and in my prompts generation, it's never going to sound exactly like me. So I've actually given up on that. And instead, I ask AI of like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and write the emails myself, but I need you to come up with a subject line, with a preview text. How should I open the email? What is the hook? What should the body be about? And then I have the CTA, obviously I already know what that is, And then I just want you to like generate, like if I want to have a 7 email nurturance sequence, 7 to 10 emails, and then I go ahead, I know what each email is going to be about, and then I just sit down and write it. The thing about it is that emails should be fairly bite-sized, right? You're standing in line, you're waiting to check out with your groceries and stuff like that. Can someone, in their anxiety and stuff, pick up their phone and, just like scroll a little bit and like read your email real fast before they check out their groceries? So you don't want to have like a huge, like really long thing or anything like that. Just like, hey, first name, hook of some sort. You're having this pain point. I understand because blah, blah, blah. I have this thingy that can help you. Maybe you have another free lead magnet or something like that. Go ahead and check that out here or something like that, right? So, and then just writing something from there, but keeping it within your own voice, because I don't think that a lot of AI is good enough to imitate your own personality quite yet. It can get pretty close, but I don't know. I still feel like if I want someone to give me money, the least I can do is like sit down and like kind of personalize my emails, especially if I'm sending, them out with like a lot of automation. I totally.
So you're setting up like 7 emails. You're not doing that consistent. Like there's some people that will send out a newsletter every day or even every week. I don't even know how to keep up with something like that. And to make it again, be my voice to where I'm not just asking somebody who knows nothing about dog training. Yeah, just slap something together for potty training and we'll throw that in there. I want it to be my voice, just like you were saying. So you're not doing those newsletters every single week or something? Or is that something you do as well?
Yeah. So this is where this is where email marketing can get so complex because so they get done with that email nurturance sequence, which is like typically 7 to 10 emails long. You remove them from that. And then you go ahead and drop them into your newsletter sequence. So like if I were to open up like my email automation right now, there'd be like a ton of different sequences that I have. And so like once you get done with one sequence, all of them get dropped into one master sequence for my newsletters, right? And so that one is one that goes out monthly because I just choose to do monthly. And so I just have all of those written out and then it just, goes out like once per month from there.
That sounds reasonable and a little bit more doable. How many do you have already created? Are you creating them once a month and you're trying to put something new, or do you have a backlog of like 36 or something like that?
Yeah, for something like this, I think that it's much better to just like block some time on your calendar, sit down, and then just type out all of the emails, put them in, schedule them, and then for the next year, literally just close your eyes and don't even think about it. Unless you need to like change some of the links or different things like that. For example, sometimes I'll go in and I'll update some of the emails because something that I want to do to keep my my contacts really engaged with my email marketing is to continuously provide value. And so going in and creating more lead magnets that are exclusive to my newsletter, right? So that way people that are in that email automation sequence, people don't want to unsubscribe because I'm consistently providing value to them. Not every single time, but it's variable reinforcement where it's like nothing in this email, nothing in this. Oh, this free 30-minute mini webinar or something like that. I don't see her post about this anywhere else. It's just for me as her newsletter subscriber. So fun, right? So kind of doing, something like that, but just like sitting down. In the course that I have, the lead generation course, I have emails. I think I have 60 emails or something like that, pre-written like templates that you can go ahead and customize and make your own. But I pretty much did the heavy lifting with the help of AI. So you can just kind of like edit it for your own and then just like plug it into, I have video screen shares where I walk you through, here's how you do your newsletter and here's how you set up the automation. Here's how you do your branding and all that really good stuff. But that's, I think a really good way for people who are really nervous about their marketing and having that consistent leads is a lot of times people think like lead generation. Oh, I just like, make a post on TikTok, make a post on Instagram. Lead generation is done, right? That's my marketing. Lead generation needs to be a nonstop machine that is just going and it's going. And while you're sleeping, there's, queues of emails that are being prepared to like be sent out, or like other things are happening in the background. Lead generation should always be putting numbers into the pipeline. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize. And when you realize it, it's either going to be freeing or it's going to be overwhelming. And you're going to be like, holy crap, I have to do lead generation all the time. Yeah, sweetie, you're a business now. And you're also a dog trainer.
And how valuable is it to have a really large email list from putting in this work? Like, what's the return on investment for someone considering, is it worth my time to do this in my business?
Yes, 100% is always worth the time. Can I break it down into metrics? No, not necessarily, because your email list and the contacts on your email list and like the health of your email list, it really just depends on your audience and how you got them into your audience. For example, you can create a really robust email list by running paid advertising, right? They don't know anything about you. They don't really know anything about your products and services. Bottom line, they do not care about you, right? And so when they are clearing out their inbox and stuff, you're just kind of like a amorphous name that maybe they've seen a couple of times, but they don't really know who or what you are, right? Versus if you were to make something that's a little bit more personal, say based off of like your social media following, you're going to have a pretty healthy list there, because these people, they watch your stories, they consume your content, whatever it may be, right? So it really just depends. But here's the thing of why I really strongly encourage people to build their email list. You do not own your YouTube platform. You do not, and I'm not saying you, Nate, but I mean,
Yeah, no.
but
Yeah.
in general, we do not own our Instagram accounts. That can be deactivated at any given point in time. It can be hacked at any point in time. Your YouTube, your TikTok, your Facebook, whatever it may be, poof, gone in an instant. And it happens all of the time to people. They get locked out, they get shut down, whatever it may be. And so you can get locked out and it's gone, right? What if you had, like for myself, for example, I think I have like 50, 60,000 followers, gone in an instant. However, my thousands and thousands of contacts in my email, I can rebuild my social media accounts fairly quickly because I own those email addresses, right? Do I own the platform to send them? No, but I download those email addresses and I have those on a hard drive. So if they were to be like, hey, we're no longer, MailerLite is no longer available, or your MailChimp plan is now going to be $80 per month instead of $30 per month. I could be like, that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and take my contacts, go somewhere else, and I'll just go ahead and rebuild somewhere else or something like that. So how impactful and valuable is it? Really impactful and very, very valuable to have, because you're going to get into people's inboxes unless you're sending spam, and then you'll get bounces. But
right. That's a good point too, because you can lose your social media platforms. You can also lose, this happened to me, and I lost close to 200 5-star reviews. When I moved from North Carolina to California, I switched my address and Google suspended the account.
Oh my God.
Couldn't get it back. All the reviews, everything gone. I mean, it literally cost me 5 figures for sure. The amount of business that I lost trying to build it back up. And I didn't have a big email list. I mean, right now it's still not that big. That's why I'm asking a lot of questions, because I want to build it up. Right now, I think I have like 2,300, which is pretty small. Someone might hear that and think it's a big number, but
no, in general, like I think that's a pretty good number. But you have a very big YouTube following. So I think that what was it from the Wolf of Wall Street? Those are rookie numbers. We need to pump those numbers up so we can get those numbers up.
Exactly. And if I had a good email list, that could have helped me get through that without losing as much money as I did trying to build it back up, getting the reviews again, the contacts, reaching out to people. So that's a really great point. And talking about paid advertising, do you recommend, if somebody does want to go the route of paid advertising, that they should learn how to do it themselves? So take a course on how to do a Google ad or Facebook ad, or is it better to find somebody to do that for you? And how do we know that we're hiring someone who's worth their weight in salt or gold, whichever analogy you prefer?
That one is so tough, because I myself And also, people who are very close to me have paid for companies to run advertising for them and get zero on their
Mm.
return on investment. Absolutely zero. And they have sunk a lot of money. For reference, like, do I have experience with this? Yes. I paid $900 per day for Facebook ads to run back at it was like during COVID. And I did this, like, people who know me are immediately going to recognize I did my 5-day dog reset, and I would upsell them into my 90-day dream dog program, and running like a ton of advertising. And the amount of ads, $900 per day, like that's like the maximum that you can do. And barely, like, obviously that was like a huge loss, right? That's going to be like a huge loss. And so like, even when you pay someone, you aren't always going to get that return back. And the thing about it is that I think that unless you come from a really tech savvy background, in order to do like Facebook or Instagram, I personally actually haven't delved into TikTok ads, or do like YouTube advertising and different things like that. Unless you're a really techie person, I think you're going to get overwhelmed really, really easily. It's really easy to do things like boosting a post. I think that can be really easy. It's not going to be as great as like going into the Facebook ads manager and like doing that. There are courses, but if you are not tech savvy, you are going to struggle with those courses. I would consider myself someone who is extremely, extremely tech savvy, and I struggle with those courses sometimes. So that can be really challenging. So you need to just know if you are going to be good at something like that, and then have the time to sit down and learn it. And then lastly, but most importantly, if you're going to do it the DIY route and you're going to follow a course or something like that, you have to be okay with paying to learn. And so what I mean by that is if you set a $5 ads budget per day, you're going to run $5 ads like per day, you need to be okay with never seeing those $5 ever again turn into anything substantial. And you also, at that point, what I find is that a lot of people that are starting up their business, they don't have their back end like systems and processes optimized. And so they're trying to send traffic to some place that isn't an optimized place to send them. Right. And so that's where knowing how, like, consumer psychology, behavioral psychology, and understanding those aspects of marketing and advertising are really important before you just kind of start throwing like money at stuff. Like, if you want to start throwing out money at things and not have it work, come throw money at me. Like, I will gladly take your money. Just kidding. But I think that if you're going to pay someone, I think you'll get probably better results than a first time person trying to run ads on their own. Either way, you need to be okay that you may not ever see that money ever again, right? Now, I could be talking from a wildly ignorant place. I do have some experience with running ads and also paying for ads to be run. And I have other people that have like run ads with like an agency or something like that and haven't gotten any return on investment. But there are really good ad agencies out there, or else they wouldn't make a killing, right? And so it's just one of those things, like investing in dog training, for example. Yeah, there's a lot of dog trainers. Yeah, you can, spend $2,000 for a 2-week board and train and then not have a trained dog at the end. There's risk in everything that you do. So those are just kind of the different things. I'm always of the mindset to encourage people, if you're first starting out, try to do organic marketing as much as possible. You are going to have to put forth a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of time. But I think that the payoff is more controllable because the outcome is really mostly dependent on you. How much effort, how much time are you willing to invest into this in order to get an end result? Versus, I'm going to throw $150 at this ad campaign, but there's nothing that you can do to influence that, right? Is it going to hit or is it not? I don't know.
Yeah, and having all your ducks in a row before you start doing that is good advice. If you're
Yeah.
sending somebody to a pipeline that's damaged, it's not going to be very helpful. Then you are just throwing money out the window. And I think you're right. There's going to be companies, just like with any service, there's going to be people who do it really well and people that are just really kind of a scam. They're just taking your money and they're not delivering results. They might be running ads, but they don't even care where the ads go and how effective they are as long as they get your money. I'm talking very generalized.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking of doing is something similar to how I found my editors, how we were talking previously. I hired a bunch of different editors. I had them all work on similar projects, and then I picked the one that I thought was the best. But that's also going in knowing that I'm losing money on the editors that don't end up doing the job that I want. I did the same thing for shorts, although I don't post enough shorts, where I think I hired 8 editors, each to
Yeah.
make a short, and then trying to pick the one that I thought was best. I think that's something you could probably do as well with marketing, but
Yeah.
knowing the risk.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of running an ad, not an ad, but a job posting on Upwork to try
Yeah.
something like that. You think that would be worthwhile, understanding the risk? Like, okay, I might
Yeah.
lose money doing this, but I have an increased chance of possibly finding someone who
Yeah.
can do these paid ads. And from my experience, I think doing paid ads with something like Google for dog
Yeah.
training business is better than
Way
Facebook,
better. Way better.
because people are usually going to Google to find a service, whereas
Yes.
Facebook, they're just kind of scrolling through, doing that death scroll as they
Yes.
go through. And the other
Yeah.
thing I do like about paid advertising, if it works well, is you can really get your target market. So if I just
100%.
want to work with puppies, I can advertise for puppies, and now I'm hanging out with
Yes.
puppies all day. And I
Yeah.
think it's great that there's trainers out there that love the aggressive dogs and dealing with the extreme behavioral modification type issues. But I've always enjoyed dogs, and I want dogs to like me as well. So I always have way more fun working with the puppies and the happy
Yeah.
go lucky, friendly golden retrievers.
Yeah.
Was
I
there
agree.
anything else you want to touch on marketing? I mean, we hit a little bit on sales. I don't know if there's much more to talk about in sales, unless you have something you want to add to marketing or sales, or should we just move to fulfillment? How do they
Um,
deliver that value?
yeah, I think that with sales, I think that we actually kind of hit on sales with like a lot of different points.
Yep.
But like in regards to like marketing, just to like reiterate the point, marketing is very much a multifaceted machine. Marketing is not just social media. And a lot of times I get people signing up for a one-on-one business consulting call and they're like, hey, I want to get, better at marketing for my business. And I was like, okay, awesome. Like which avenues are you looking at for your marketing? And they're like, oh, well, for my Instagram account. And I was like, okay, so specifically you're only doing one channel of marketing. Marketing is a lot of different platforms and there's a lot of different things. And the thing with marketing that I love and also that I hate is that all of it is kind of in a way interconnected and dependent upon one another. And so it really, really, before you start getting into investing into marketing, the success of your marketing is so highly predicated on what your back end processes and systems are in your business, or else everything is going to kind of fall apart. And the thing, even if you do advertising, if some of your ads pop off, if some of your marketing, like your post goes viral or something like that, if you are not ready and prepared for the influx, right? This always happens. Like you'll see this on TikTok of people like, our business was, about to fail, and then this post went viral, and now, we had to do all these different things, and they were, doing a product inside of their house, and they had to go buy a warehouse. But there's also failure stories of that, of people being like, I ordered this and then I didn't get it until 3 months later, blah, 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 blah. And they're really mad. So if you are going to, take marketing seriously, if you're going to take advertising seriously, you better make sure your processes are in place first. So that way, if something goes viral or your ads pop off or your, SEO does really well, that when you get suddenly 100 new leads overnight, easy, whatever, 100 new leads, no big deal. Super happy to be here. Not, oh my God, I don't know, right? And then there's a bunch of angry people, and then you lose a lot of people, and it's not just losing people, you get bad reviews, and that can be detrimental, right? And you don't want to pay money running ads, so you get bad reviews. So it's like you're paying money to get bad reviews.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of reviews, if we want good reviews, we have to fulfill
Yes.
what we promise to our clients.
Yes.
And that does get us into dog training and different services that someone can offer. How do they optimize the fulfillment so the clients either want to come back or they do start sharing word of mouth? I know a lot of trainers brag about never doing any sort of marketing. All their clients come from word of mouth, which is a form of marketing, of course. And we want to use as many as possible, as we just talked about, having everything set up.
Yeah.
But how do we do that fulfillment? What's the strategy that you have that's made the majority or all your clients happy as they finish working with you?
Yeah. This is something that I think I would say that like my business consulting calls is either like marketing stuff or it's optimizing the customer journey. And I think that that is like one of the big pieces of advice that I would give to people is please map out your entire customer journey. You should be able to know every single spot along the way from the moment that someone enters your pipeline to the end of your service and then after your service. For example, if you're starting a business and it doesn't start with, okay, I have the dog with me. Let's pretend it's private lessons, right? So the beginning of the customer journey isn't, okay, so now I'm at the client's house and training their dog. Whoa, full stop. There's a ton of stuff that has happened before that. You need an invoice, you need a contract, you need to have communication templates in place. You need to make sure that you, set expectations with the client. You have to have done the eval or the phone consultation. So when you have first contact with a client, what is that first contact? And then what is the second contact? And what do you provide? Like what communication needs to go out and what communication needs to come in? Okay, so let's go ahead and pretend you did a in-person evaluation. After that, you need to send a recap email. So you should have an email template. In that recap email, what is in that, right? And you should templatize that. Is there the contract? Is there the invoice link? Is there a PDF document? Is there waivers? Whatever that may be. You send that out, and then what is the next step after that? And you should plan every single step along the way of communication that goes out and when communication should go in, right? And like making it automated and templatized as much as possible until you get to the very end of your service and you have fulfilled it. One of the best pieces of advice, I can't remember where I heard this. So if someone is watching this and they know where it's from, you should tell me. But someone said a lot of businesses could do so much better because they stop their client from giving them more money. And so what she meant by that is that when you are done with the product or the service, are you offering some other way for the client to still pay you money, right? And so what this is trying to do is essentially reduce churn. So churn, especially for dog trainers, we have very high churn levels because it's like you train the dog's trained, you don't need any more training, bye, I never see you again, right? So how are you stopping the client from paying you more money, right? You do a private lesson. What's an upsell from that? Is it going to be group classes? Is it going to be nature hikes? Is it going to be boarding? Is it going to be a low-cost touch-up lesson? Is it going to be day training? Whatever it may be. But how are you stopping your client from giving you more money? So after you have fulfilled the original product or service, in this instance, the service, how can you continue to nurture that client and continue to have them pay you money, especially if you did a really good job, right? They're like, yeah, I would love to have my dog board with you. You did a really great job with their training. Yeah, I would love to do a group walk with you. Like this was so much fun. I would love to be in your community of people, right? And so really mapping that out. And I say this so much to people. If you cannot take something from inside of your brain and bring it outside of yourself by writing it or typing it, you do not know it well enough. And I tell this to people who are really nervous about creating online courses, that about creating social media content. And I don't know if it's fine if you disagree with me, but would you agree with me, Nate, that like if you don't know your dog training enough that you can sit down and write an article or make a YouTube video or something like that, you probably don't know it well enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the same thing with like your fulfillment and fulfilling the product or fulfilling the service that you have is that you need to know every single step along the way. Now,
it also reduces stress too.
Definitely.
So I write down everything. I still have checklists of things that I need. Every time I write things down, it gets it out of my head and it reduces stress.
Yes, definitely. And I think that for entrepreneurs, more entrepreneurs need to hear that of getting ideas outside of their mind in some way. I'm such a big fan of like physical things because digital things like, everyone has some level of object permanence. And so having some way to like physically, so like behind me, I have like a whiteboard and then I also have like a bulletin board as well. You probably can't see it in here, but they're like up on my wall. So that way, when I have like ideas about stuff, I do something called like a brain dump and I get it out of my head. And then I organize it from there on my whiteboard. Once I have it organized, it becomes more permanent on my bulletin board. And I have different categories: my mentorship students and consulting, team K9 training. And then I also have other businesses. I have like a rental property and stuff like that. So, and then there's like my personal life, and they all go into these different buckets, and all of them are categorized, right? And so doing that as an entrepreneur, but to digress back to the fulfillment, yeah, knowing your customer journey and every single point along the way. And to be honest with you, you're not going to know it until you actually start fulfilling something. So making sure that you are developing SOPs as you go along is really, really important. And really just, hey, okay, so I'm doing this private lesson. This is the process that I did, and here's all the different things that I did. How can I optimize this so that way the next person, all of these little pain points or all of these, what's that called? Bottlenecks, that they don't happen with the next one. And then you keep on iterating from there, and you are really keeping track of the process that you take with each client. So that way at the end of it all, hopefully you optimize so much, you can actually kind of take your hands off of it a little bit. Yeah, you do the call, but then do you have automation in place that automatically triggers, that sends out an email template that has the contract and the invoice? Can you have different things in place so that way their communication always goes out for updates, like if you're doing board and trains, so that way invoices are paid, so that way waivers are signed, so that way people are registering for classes like group classes or something like that? Can you make sure that you are putting all of these different systems in place? But you can only do that if you actually know your system and you're actually iterating on it. Yeah, I kind of word vomited there, but
Do you do a if this then that sort of thing on the pipeline as well?
it depends on what it is. Like for sales, for example, like if this then that, like if a lead comes in and they do this, then I will do that, or I will
Right.
do this. Yes. So like for different things like that. And I think that that's important to do when you are making your pipeline. Like successful lead, it follows like this route, and then unsuccessful lead, they tell me no, it follows this route, which is asking for a referral. And then this one, which is radio silence, is this one here. So usually I break down like a customer journey into 3 different parts, following flat out no, success, and then radio silence, where they just kind of like ghosted, right? Because I, with my raging ADHD, am one such person. I really want to do something. I need reminders. I am someone that when, someone asks me for something, I have all these different things in place to try and remember it, and I want to do it. Sometimes I will forget though, and that's okay because reminders are good.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another question that I had that I wanted to ask while you were talking about that, and I'm trying to remember what it was. So we were talking about if this, then that as they go through. What was it? What did you end up saying? Take me back.
Yeah, if it like for like the sales process, like if it's successful, or if it's like like they say no, but you ask for a referral, and then if it's like cold and they don't respond back to
I do
you.
remember. Okay.
Yeah,
So what I was going to ask is, uh, well, you did say one thing. You said SOP. Were you talking about standard
yeah,
operating procedures?
yes.
Okay. I don't know if everybody knows that. It's something that we use in the military, but is that something that most people know? SOP?
I don't think like
I'm not sure.
layman people usually know. I think that for management, especially specifically for
Hmm.
people like who hire, I think, or like yeah, upper management, we'll just go ahead and say, I think that they would know SOP. But yes, thank you so much for clarifying that.
Okay, perfect. And then another big part is I think it's LVC or something like that, lifetime value of the customer, or
Yes.
LCV, lifetime
Yeah.
customer value. Mine is really low because of the thing that you mentioned where we solve the client's problem.
Yeah.
And I've developed my system so much where I'm always trying to simplify it and make it super easy for people to understand. It's like, here's the rules to the game. Now, if you want to be good at it, go play. You
Yeah.
have to play it quite a bit if you want to be good. You're not going to go out and suddenly be competing up against the best in the game when it comes to basketball if you don't spend any time on the court.
Yeah.
And so, since I give them this roadmap and I make it very clear and I give them videos to reference and I give them written material, most only need a few lessons and they're very happy with the results. That's why
Yeah.
almost everyone ends up writing a review. If someone else is also running into this issue, what's a good approach? Because what I've been thinking of doing is removing or really increasing the price for my one-off lessons
Mhm.
and then having only package deals.
Yep. Yep. And that is something that I really encourage people to do, is actually to move away. Like, there's context and nuance, right? So at the very beginning, I would say that it can be really beneficial to do the one-off training sessions. You're trying to get more experience, you're trying to optimize your business, you are creating those SOPs and everything like that. But over a period of time, I think that a lot of people, dog owners specifically, would get better results in a package, because I think that when you do one-off training sessions, and again, this could just be a me problem, and the people that I work with also experiencing the same problem, is that we tend to info dump so much on them, of like,
Yep.
here's this thing, here's this thing, here's this thing. If you want to do this, you need to reference that. I'll give you this one and this one and this one. And like, we're just tossing things at them like left and right. And then if they want to, do something, they're like, hey Natalie, I really want to do this. I'm like, that's so great. You can go ahead and reference this other thing that I gave you. And then that's it. Versus if it was like in, for example, if it was like in a package deal, and it's like, okay, here's our puppy package, here is our basic obedience, and here is our advanced, right? Let's pretend more often than not, people are going to go for the basic obedience package. Sit down, come, place, heel. And it's just, and they have some nuisance behaviors, right? That they're jumping on guests, they're counter surfing, and they're barking. Boom, easy, done. And we go ahead and do that. Then to help make it so that way you aren't stopping your client from giving you more money, you make the next step, the next evolution, a no-brainer. You always position it, and the client always has like a perceived image of your business of like, this isn't the end all be all. I am starting here, but the end goal, the end thing that I want is, let's go ahead and pretend off-leash recall and proofing skills for outdoor patios and going to Lowe's and Home Depot and blah, blah, blah. Great. I'm not going to stop my client from giving me money, because the next step after that, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you guys so much. It's been such a pleasure, training with you and Fluffy. You guys have successfully graduated from my basic obedience program. So, if you want to go ahead and take this a step further, I know that you guys like to do X, Y, and Z, and I know that Fluffy would be really great with A, B, and C. So the next step, if you want to, if you're happy here is where you can leave a review. Or I do have my advanced obedience package, and you guys wouldn't have to go through all of the other stuff. We would just work on the e-collar conditioning and off-leash recall portion, since you guys have already graduated from that basic part there, right? So if you guys want to do that, because you guys have already completed that, there is a XYZ discount if you want to upgrade into the advanced obedience package. But besides that, I think you guys did so wonderful. So thank you guys so much. If you could leave me a review, that would be super great, right? Boom.
And
Awesome.
having that structured approach is also going to prevent what you just said we're all guilty of. I mean, I think at least everyone who's as obsessed with dog training as we are is going to give that data dump, and they're going to be dealt
Yes.
with or dealing
Yeah.
with data overload. Because I've done it, I can't tell you how many times. I go in for a lesson, it's scheduled for an hour, and I'm there 2 hours, which could be a deterrent where they
Yeah.
don't want you to come back. So I think another thing that could be nice about doing the program, because I've been thinking about this for a while, how I could change this, where it is a system, and then even reducing the lesson time, because people do
Yes.
value their own time. And if I have a program where it doesn't really matter the amount of times that I come, you're going to get the information, and it's going to be laid out in a way that's easy for you to absorb and start implementing it. And a session could be as short as 30 minutes. Come
Yeah.
in, show you the one skill, practice this. Don't worry about everything else. Get good at this, because these skills are going to compound on one another.
Yes, for sure.
And then would you just raise the price for the one-off lesson? If someone still wanted that, would you still offer it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's the thing that I usually recommend for people to do if they're really hesitant to let go of the one-off, because it's been so lucrative for them and they've done it just like so often. I'm like, yeah, babes, like keep it, definitely, for sure. But instead, we're going to go ahead and make that $130 or $150 for that hour instead. So that way it's kind of a no-brainer when they're looking at, okay, for this session package, let's go ahead and pretend that for basic obedience, it's going to be 5 or 6 lessons. Advanced is going to be, let's pretend 8 lessons or something like that. That when they kind of like do the math, that it makes a lot more sense to do the package. And especially because the one-off session no longer has, and you get this and this and this and this and reference this. It's like, you get this and that's all that you get. You can get a discount of, that, off of if you enroll into a package, but in the package, you get this and you get X and you get Y and Z and A and B and C. And then if you complete that, the next step after that would be the advanced. But for your guys' purposes, I think you just need to do the basic right now. But if you do ever decide to do the advanced, you also get X amount off if you want to enroll in that. But right now, I don't think you guys, need that. Let's just go ahead and do the basic obedience for right now, right? And you're like really guiding them. I think that this is called, actually, no, price anchoring is what that is called, where like you're going to offer one thing, but you're going to have the price really high because you don't really want a lot of that, but you'll still offer it. And then you have like another, so in between all of the choices, it works best when you have 3 choices. Going back to what I was saying about having your 3 services. So you have your 3 choices and then you make one of them a no-brainer. And that is the one that all of your CTAs that you do, email marketing, your advertising, your marketing, hammering at that one really good product that you are going to become just a genius at. That is your wheelhouse, which is that puppy training. Is that just, for me, I like working with like a lab that needs to know how to recall and walk on a leash and stop jumping on people. That is like, oh, I love working with those dogs. And then there's like the advanced training or behavior modification where it's like, hey, my dog wants to like eat your face when you come into the home. And I'm like, okay, don't want that one, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like you could do it, but
yes.
And then do you offer any for the products or services that you offer? Do you offer any guarantees with those? Do you recommend dog trainers have guarantees?
I feel strongly about this. I feel very strongly that you should never guarantee something from an animal that is sentient and has their own emotions and can make their own choices. You cannot guarantee that. Furthermore, even if you do everything right with the dog, let's pretend that you're doing like a board and train or something like that, that dog will recall on a dime. That dog is A+, stellar, right? Could pass the good citizens, whatever. You can't control the owners, and the owners' lives will sometimes be in an upheaval. They could have a loss. They could move. They could lose their job. They could, whatever it may be. And all of the training, dog training was invented because dogs aren't living the way that dogs are naturally supposed to be living. Just like health and fitness was invented because humans are living the way that nature did not intend for us to live. We were never supposed to be sitting in a chair, staring at a screen for 8 hours a week, right? And yet here we are. And so if the dog training success is predicated on something that is fundamentally unnatural, why would you guarantee that, especially for a sentient being? So instead, I recommend that instead of having a guarantee, that you have other things in place like touch-up sessions that are available, either a certain amount of touch-up sessions and then the rest are discounted, or there is like discounted like day training programs, or that you can have unlimited amount of like virtual help that you can get or something like that. If you don't want to like tie your time to it, let's say, and like drive 45 minutes for a dog that you already trained, but owners' lives got really hectic, right? So they kind of fell through on it, that you don't have to drive 45 minutes into the city and then back. And then you have all of your other clients, your board and trains, and you have to do administration work. Let's just offer unlimited and lifetime virtual help if you graduate from any of our different packages, not one-offs, packages, right? And that's one of our differentiating factors that we go ahead and provide to the client. And that's okay if people want to disagree with me on that, but it's just like something I feel like in this interview, I keep on saying, I feel really strongly about this. I feel really passionately about this. And I didn't realize that there are so many things I kind of feel really passionate about.
And it doesn't sound like you're saying you don't have any guarantees.
No.
It sounds like what you're saying is you don't guarantee that the results are going to be maintained by the client.
Yeah.
But it does sound like you're guaranteeing that you're going to do the services that they're paying for. You are guaranteeing satisfaction in the sense that you are going to fulfill your part of the deal.
I
Like I say,
guarantee
I'm going to
help.
work with you. I'm going to do these lessons. I'm going to teach you these things that
Yeah,
I do guarantee. What you do with that information, that's on you. I can't guarantee that you're going to be a stud and you're
yep.
going to be able to work with every dog after working with me.
Exactly. Yeah. So guaranteeing help, I think, is what I would say is that I do for my clients because I do enjoy working with them. Like if I take the time to vet a client, they have passed some sort of rigmarole, and I want to work with them. And for me, I only do board and trains, and so these dogs live with me for 3 weeks. Like I want to see you succeed. I'm messaging the owners every other day, sometimes more than that. Like I build a relationship with them. Like, why wouldn't I want to continue to help you? Right. But I'm not going to guarantee things because, like, I don't know what it is that you are doing. And I don't want to have to be responsible for that, especially because as an entrepreneur, your time is so valuable. Right.
Mhm. And you
So
only offer board and trains? You don't do like group classes or just private lessons?
at this point, yes, I'm very blessed to just only do board and trains at this point. So before, used to do the group classes and then the pack walks and the private lessons, and then the board and trains. And now I only do board and trains for very select clients because my
And that's because that's what you enjoy most is doing the board and trains?
yes, definitely. My location moved, so I am much further from the city. So remember when I was talking about, hey, take a look at your lifestyle. What makes the most sense? For
Mhm.
me, Raleigh being the closest city, I'm technically not in Raleigh. I'm 45 minutes away from Raleigh, and that's just like to get into like the city proper. So it take me a really long time to drive there for private lessons. And then like I don't have a facility, so I wouldn't like be able to like host things. So I just moved only to board and trains, but also the nature of my work changed because I started doing mentorship and business consulting. So the majority of my days are spent in this office on camera and
Mhm.
mentoring people. So, I mean, I don't really have to do that anymore, I guess. So, yeah, just board and trains for me.
And how do you structure the board and train? Is it always 3 weeks? Do you have add-ons? Do you focus just on the labs? Or will you take on like an extreme behavioral case or aggression or something like that?
Yeah. Oh man, I burnt myself out. Let me tell you, Nate. I took on a lot of behavior modification for
I did
about
that
like
too.
2 years, I think. Because it was all I don't know about you, it was a lot of the COVID dogs, to be honest. They grew up.
Mhm.
And so they were more manageable when they were like puppies and stuff, but they grew up. And so it was a lot of reactivity. It was a lot of anxiety. And so that's pretty much all that I was getting. And I knew how to handle it. So of course I was taking it. And because I only do board and trains, because my husband and I, we built a house like more in the country. And so it really depended on the dog. I would say that the majority of the time, what I would typically do is that I sign them up for a 3 week board and train. But if they need a little bit more time, then I just move them to a boarding price for an additional week, is what I usually do for my behavior modification cases, just because it's so challenging. And for me, I'm very unique in this sense. And a lot of people are not going to resonate with this, but I don't get local clients. I get people who travel. So I am here in North Carolina, but I get people a lot from Texas, from Florida, Georgia, and then like New Jersey and New York are like my biggest places. Oh, and also Virginia. So a lot of people travel to me. And so that can be really hard to be like, hey, we're going to have like this set amount of time. And I also can't go and see dogs for behavior modification. Before, if it was just basic obedience, it's fine. I just close you over the phone. But for behavior modification, I like to see the interaction in between like the owner and the dog. But that got really hard when I started getting leads from people that really needed help and they were driving some 16 hours away, right? And so I would like start people with like the 3 weeks, and then if we needed more time than that, if I wasn't sure, then I would say like, hey, we'll might need some more, so it might just be an additional week, but we'll do a boarding cost. Or if I knew the behavior was severe enough, then I would just immediately start them on a 6 week board and train. And then we would just go ahead and go from there. So, but my minimum, I moved away from the 2 week board and train. And I just pretty much, the lowest amount of time is a 3 week board and train with me. So in between 3 to 6 weeks, I would say is about the average amount of time that people would have with me.
And I find 3 weeks to be much better than 2 weeks as well. I started with 2 weeks and then I switched to 3 weeks, and the results are better. I mean, that 1 week makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
For work life balance, do you send the dogs home on weekends or do you keep them the entire time that they're with you? Do you offer the day training version where they drop off in the morning, pick up in the evening?
No, I had toyed around with the idea when I lived closer, like more like in the city. I had kind of toyed around with the idea, but it was just trying to juggle all of that and just the scheduling of it alone. And especially, people are notoriously late. So
Mhm.
in between people being late and me going over on sessions and stuff like that, I found that really hard. Also, I definitely found that no matter what I did, it was like I was sending update videos throughout the week. So, like for dogs going home on weekends, right? I would send communication every single day throughout the week. I would also send like informational and instructional videos throughout the week. And then before the dog went home, to do like a mini like hands-on session with that dog before they went home. I just always felt like the first couple of days that the dog came back, the Monday and Tuesday, it I felt like I was like trying to get the dog back to where that dog was like when they left. So I just and I think that some people can do it really successfully. I don't know if maybe I have a I don't know. But I just didn't find like a lot of success with that. And then like I mentioned, my clientele, I think due to social media, I just started getting way too many people that were out of state. So it didn't really make sense to do that. So I just kind of did away with it in general. And then with day training, that was never something that I could like really keep up with in between the virtual training, the board and trains, and the private lessons I was doing at the time. And then sometimes doing a group class and sometimes doing a pack walk. It was just like too much to also try and do day trains as well. And um, I had a facility for a short period of time, but I've always been out of my home. And so kind of like having that amount of traffic of people coming in and out and stuff like that, it was just like a little bit too much because most of the time I'm working in my garage. Like I outfit my garage as like my training area. That's where I do like turnover sessions and stuff like that. But no matter what, sometimes when people come, they're like, "Hey, I really need to use your bathroom. Do you mind if?" And it's like, I'm not actually doing stuff inside my house, but a lot of the time people end up coming into my home anyway. And I
Mhm.
have like my own personal dog that was like my husband's dog, and then my husband, he works from home a lot of the time, so it was like it would be like a really big like upset in his life as well if I were to have like a lot of people. So again, going back to look at your lifestyle, what is the most realistic thing that you can do? So for me, it's just the board and trains, but I used to do
That
other things. Yeah.
that makes sense. I had a hard time trying to do the day training as well. What
Yeah.
did end up working was just having them Monday through Friday and letting them come take the dog on the weekend, which I found most clients like that. But
Yeah.
to agree with what you were saying, when they come back on Monday and Tuesday, you're having to kind of go back over things,
Yeah.
or then you're dealing with that negative behavioral contrast because they're not listening and they're giving the dog a bunch of treats. And then you're trying to work with the dog after they had the dog and spoiled them over the weekend. And you're having to
Yeah.
build up that drive and that motivation, all the things that we channel into obedience.
Yeah.
I know, so you're focused primarily on doing stay and trains, but you did lessons and you did private lessons before.
Mhm.
Would you include, if you were doing in-home lessons, did you have a travel fee or did you have a cap on how far someone can schedule out the lesson? Because if someone's 45 minutes away, that's an hour and a half added just for commuting.
Yes, definitely. So I definitely had a cap on. So at first, when I first started, I was going to people's homes and I had a cap on the radius, and I built in the cost into the price of the program because
Mm.
no one wants to be nickel and dimed on a bunch of stuff, which is like I've always wanted, my training services to be like a, hey, it's like an all-inclusive resort or like an all-inclusive like cruise, right? Like when you get onto the cruise, it's not like every single meal you have to pay for, every single drink. You want to go into, this room on the cruise. Oh, you got to pay for that. No, no, no. You pay one ticket and you get access to all of the stuff, right? That you need for that specific thing. So at the very beginning, I was going to people's homes and I was doing that, but that was burning me out really, really fast because of
Mm.
the traffic that was around here. And so I switched it to where people were coming to me and I was training it at a park that was right behind my house and I was doing, that. And then I decreased the cost a little bit because people were, traveling to me. So I actually still had both options where I would go to you, but it was a more premium sort of surface. And I had like a radius of where I would go to. Did I sometimes go outside of that because, the dog trainer heart, you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can help them. Yeah, obviously, of course. And then like a cheaper option or a more affordable option of, meeting up at a park nearby, and then we would go ahead and do it there. And so that's kind of like how I structured both of those different ones.
And would you ever have issues meeting at the park if you're training with a new dog, lots of distractions,
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And
and you
that was
just kind of work through it? Was it more about just getting the clients the information, getting them to understand the mechanics, and then going back and practicing it in a neutral environment?
Yeah, definitely. Because there was, when you go, for me, when it comes to dog training, there's only three mechanisms of control, right? You have yourself, you have the dog, and you have the environment. Optimally, you want to have control over all of those three different things. But when you're training a new dog, you don't have control of the environment and you don't have control of the dog. So it's just you up against all of these, these two different factors. So there would be off leash dogs that would be running around. There would be the weather. The weather was a huge one. Whether too hot, it's too cold, it's too rainy, it started snowing, whatever it may be. And so it have those different factors, or just like the dog is just like a dog that was just way like over aroused and underexposed. So everything was novel, everything was a distraction. And so, yeah, getting the owners, but I found that meeting up at a public park, being in a different place and doing something new with someone that you've never met before, when your stress levels increase, just like with dogs, you don't retain and function as well as you optimally would, right? Like you have a little bit more adrenaline, you're a little bit more stressed and everything like that. So just something really simple and basic, like leash handling, for example, the clients would really struggle with because their dog would be there. Their dog is like pulling up at the end of the leash. So I would be holding them. And then like I would also be trying to guide the client with like, trying to get them with their leash handling, their treat pouch. Here's how you do your food handling. We have to think about our timing and our verbal markers and everything like that. So we're just trying to do just like that one simple thing. But the owners are nervous, and so they're like really tense. They're not like really loose. They're kind of like looking around and everything, and then they wouldn't retain that information very well. So that was like one of the big challenges of having people meet up at a public park, is just kind of like the stress and exposure of it all for like the client themselves, I guess you could say. So also something to consider for those of you wanting to start your own business and you're like, oh, I'll just have, do sessions at a public park or something like that. I don't know. Sometimes even if the owners are great and the environment is fine, sometimes it's just way too over threshold for the dog and the dog's not going to want to eat.
It does make it more difficult. And I do a lot of the same stuff that you were talking about, and then really just trying to give them the information so they're
Yeah.
able to take that back and they're able to go work with the dog. So we covered four, at least big picture. Now for the fifth one, finances. Do you have any certain guidelines for someone just starting out when it comes to dealing with the financial side of running and owning a dog training business, how to keep it organized and how to do it right for tax purposes?
Yes. I would say that the biggest thing, like, so my first dog training business that I had, did a lot of things wrong, but there is one thing that I did do right. And that was have one payment processor go into one business bank account that was separate from my personal finances. And that is incredibly, incredibly important. For those of you that are listening, you're very lucky that you're listening to this and people are giving this away for free, because this is something that is so incredibly important that people look over, but you will lose the protection of your LLC if someone wants to sue you or something like that, right? Let's pretend that a dog escaped in your care, a dog got hurt or something like that. Someone sues you and they take you into court or something like that. They're going to take a look at your finances and different things like that. And if the money that you are getting from your clients and stuff is going into a personal bank account, in the eyes of the law, there's no difference in between those things. They can then come after your personal assets, right? So when you open a business, you need to make sure that that goes into a separate business bank account, right? You need to make sure that that is separate and you pay yourself as though you are an employee. At the very beginning, will it be the whole enchilada? Yeah, definitely, for sure. Minus 20% that you should allocate for taxes and you should always leave in there. But one of the things that I really encourage for people to do is to try and only have one payment processor. Don't go, I take PayPal. You can also Zelle me. You can also Venmo me. There's also Cash App. There's also a Stripe link. There's whatever else that people like take for money, right? And then at the end of it all, when it comes time for tax season, you know what you got to do? You got to go and you got to get your K-12 from Stripe, from PayPal, from Venmo, from Zelle, from everything. You got to get all of these documents together, and then you have to like make sure that it all matches up with the bank account. And if you have been putting it into your personal bank account, you know what else is in that personal bank account? You go into the movies, you going out and getting drinks, you going and getting your groceries, buying some toilet paper, all of that stuff. And you don't know what was a business expense and what was a personal expense, right? So when you open a business and when you do your finances, I recommend one payment processor, if possible, goes into one business bank account. And then, if possible, have the business bank account that you have automations, have 3 automations: automation for taxes, automation for business reallocation, automation for paying you out as an employee of your business. And I'm specifically talking about if you are a solopreneur, entrepreneur, but you're solo.
Something like that. Yeah, solo entrepreneur. I know what you're talking about. You're
Thank you.
close.
Yes, I was close. Yeah. I don't know. I must have just had a stroke. So if you're just that, that's going to be the best thing. So, 20%, 25% for taxes, and then 30% for your business reallocation. Business reallocation being things like, do you need to pay for your email marketing software? Do you need to pay for your website? Do you need to pay for your equipment or whatever it may be? And that's money that you pull from, specifically only from that, and you only pay with your business debit or credit card, right? And then your personal allocation, whatever is left over, you transfer that to your personal bank account, and that's what you take then, right? At the beginning, you probably won't have anything of business reallocation. It's just, I have a private lesson client, going to take 20% of that, keep that in for taxes, and the rest of it, I need to pay rent. I got to eat food, right? And so that's kind of what I would recommend for your finances. You can also,
do you put them into different banks, or are you fine keeping them in the same bank as long as there's the business account and the personal account?
Yes, yeah. Usually, like, just keeping it in one bank is usually fine, but just making sure that you have, typically with a bank, you can have like different like sub accounts like in that bank. So like when you have your taxes, it goes into the sub account, so you can see as the year goes on and it's climbing, of like, okay, I can anticipate, I see this big number here. However, I'm always going to subtract this number in this sub account here of the $47,000 in taxes or something like that, which is what I'm looking at right now. So making sure that like, hey, I need to subtract that from this total number because that's not actually mine, right? And all of that being said, with taxes, you can do it annually or you can do it, every quarter or whatever it is. I would recommend working with a CPA, obviously, and having like an accountant that goes over all of that with you. But keeping track of all those things. I find that if you do that, then you don't really need to do the whole you can have like QuickBooks, but I find that most just banking services in general they have some sort of like AI thing that will do it for you, that will go ahead and like tag it in like certain like categories. So when you go to do your own taxes, like you'll already have that. But you can also integrate like QuickBooks, let's say, for example, if you want to do that. But if you keep all of your expenses in that business bank account and only use the business card for those business expenses, it takes away the pressure of having to like log every single thing that you pay and like log it in like I don't know, like Google Sheets or something like that, if you're trying to not have a lot of subscriptions and different things like that. So I would say that that's something that's really important for new people who are starting out on their business journey, not to really meld and mush together their personal and their business finances together.
And having the one payment processing option, I think, is really smart too, because when you were saying doing taxes and having to deal with like taxes for me is such a nightmare. I hate doing it every year.
Oh,
And I have 2 accountants. I have one accountant that regulates my QuickBooks all year round to make sure everything's correct with all the different streams of income. And then I have the one at the end of the year that does everything and puts it through. With the quarterly or annual taxes, quarterly I think is usually more required if you're selling products.
I
right?
think so. Or if you are like an S corp or a C corp, I think that you might also want to do quarterly taxes. Then I think for the majority of solopreneurs, said it right,
There
solo
you go.
entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, that's just like yourself. I think that just doing your annual taxes, what is it, April 15th or something like that.
Mhm.
I think for the most part is usually fine for the majority of people.
And how are you on time right now? Are you still good?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I
Okay, cool.
don't have anything else that was going on in my day. I did, but then they rescheduled. So I was like, "Pff, awesome, cool. Like I can just like
Because
hang
I
out and
realized we've been going for a while. Like we covered a lot of good stuff, big picture of the business, but I
yeah,
do want to talk a little bit about dog training as well,
yes,
so we
yeah,
can finish on some dog training stuff.
perfect.
And I
Yeah.
think a good one to transition to, unless you had any saved rounds that you want to mention about any of the main parts of running and owning a business.
No, I think that we covered like a lot, to be honest. I think that honestly, if someone were to watch this, I think that they got a lot of really good value. If they actually sit down and listen, they got really good value today.
I know I certainly have already.
Good. Yay.
And talking about dog training, so you do focus very heavily on owner education. How do you coach people to carry over the training once their dog goes home? So after you do your board and train, the 3 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it is, and especially for those that are struggling with consistency or confidence.
Yeah, really good question. So, the really big thing that I have come to realize, and it may be different for other people's target audience that they are working with and the customers that they have, but the really big thing is setting expectations up front. From the moment that you first have contact, whether that be email or social media messages, or if that be in a phone consultation or in person evaluation, whatever it is, I find it's very important to start setting expectations. And what I mean by setting expectations is the biggest plight that dog trainers face is owner consistency once it is just them and their dog, right? And so it's really important in your content that you create, because that's usually the first place that people get perception of your services that you provide, and is setting that expectation in your content, in your copy that you have on your website, in your email marketing, but also in your evaluations and consultations and different things like that. You also need to be, when you're talking about your service, of like, okay, so to get started, I'll go ahead and have you sign, the agreement. You'll pay the initial deposit. And then we'll go ahead, once you complete that, I'll reach out via phone or email, whatever, and set up the first training date. And then once we get done with all of that, we'll have our go home session and we'll solidify the date and time. And then you will go home. So what you can expect when you finally get home with your dog is, and then go into those expectations. What can they expect? What will their life look like? And when you are working with the client, of continuing to foreshadow, if people are literary and they understand literary terms, to kind of like foreshadow what is to come, right? So that way when the time actually comes, they have been thinking back at night. Usually what happens, like why sleep is so important for humans and also for dogs, that when you are sleeping, your brain replays backwards. We don't know why the brain replays it backwards, but the brain replays the events of your day, key events in your day, backwards. And so if you have said, something about the expectations, their subconscious mind is already putting that into their future, that they're going to need to go ahead and change their behavior in the future. And you're already training them to go ahead and expect these changes to come. But if you don't do that, and then suddenly you're working, with the client, or let's pretend you're doing a private lesson, and then you say, okay, so now you need to do X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C now. And then they go, oh God, like, okay, so I need to do that. So this week, I have this thing that I have to go to, and then I have to do, when am I going to do this? Versus if you've already kind of front loaded them with that when you say that at the end of your first private lesson, they're like, yeah, I'm so excited. So I already went and I bought this equipment and I'm going to do it every single day, right? As I'm starting to cook dinner or something like that, I'm going to carve out those 10 minutes. they've already done the work, right? Not this scrambling and different things like that. So setting expectations is really, really important. And you can do the same thing when you are doing board and trains, that not every single, but the majority of text messages that you send the owner or emails or whatever, how you do updates for your board and train clients, you should be like, here's what we worked on. Here's what the dog struggled with. You can anticipate when your dog comes home that you're going to have to work on this a lot more, right? And here's the value of why you need to work on it. And I think that that's a really important thing that a lot of dog trainers kind of miss on. They just tell them, do the XYZ, do the XYZ. But a lot of people will not do something if they don't understand the function behind the reason of why they need to do it. Why is this important for me to do that? Oh, verbal markers, you need to have that. Why? Oh, it's because you need to blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, my dog is lunging at people. What's the importance of verbal markers? Well, we need to, what was the saying that you said from the other guy? Prove the dog wrong or something like that when it comes to counter condition. Love that. Who said that? So that way I can quote them.
Carlos Ramirez.
Yeah, Carlos Ramirez. Yeah. So, but explaining the why behind it. And so when it comes to keeping consistency, front load them with the expectations. So that way it's in their subconscious mind, and then explain the why of why they need to do it. That ties into the end goal and the ultimate desire that they have, which requires you as the dog trainer to know and to understand, not just surface level, what is the end goal? Off leash recall. No. Why do they want off leash recall? Why? Because they hike a lot. That is their hobby that they do. So don't just say, oh, so you can have off leash recall. Oh, so that way when you go on that trip that you were talking to me about, when you bring Fluffy with you, you're not going to have any worries. But it's really important that we do these verbal markers here. Got it? So what are we going to do this week? And then getting that adherence from the client. I don't know if I answered that succinctly. I kind of like bounced around a little bit and word vomited. So what can I add for clarity?
No, that was great. And it goes back to what we were talking about before of mapping out your client's journey.
Yes.
If you map out your client's journey, then you should know where they're going to be and then to properly prep them and prepare them for the journey that they're taking with their dog. Because dog training is a journey. Although everyone wants to get to the destination, that's a very small percentage of what we actually do. Most of the time, it is the journey. And I'm really big on explaining the why. I consider myself very much a science-based trainer. I want to know all the science behind everything that we're doing because I also think it makes it significantly more clear and easier for somebody to be able to problem solve when they understand, even if it's just the fundamentals when it comes to learning theory. So like really understanding classical conditioning and how it works with a dog, not just with markers, but for everything within the dog's life and how that's going to impact the journey. And same thing with operant conditioning. How does that work within dog training? And how does associative versus non-associative learning? So then even if it sounds intimidating initially at the beginning, all this terminology, I've always been the person to repeat it quite a bit so they hear it and they start to understand how the pieces connect. And then if I do say something, just like you said, having the reason behind it, like one that I use as an example all the time, and I even mentioned this last night when I was doing another interview, is the reinforcement loop, because it's a really common mistake that a lot of people do. They think they're doing the right thing. Oh, redirect the dog to the behavior. Okay, give them the treat. But what triggered that sequence? The initial behavior that you're trying to stop. So we create a reinforcement loop.
Yeah.
And then when we tell someone that, they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And you're not just pulling this stuff out of thin air. You're actually referencing proven science that's already been documented. So yeah, I think your answer was great. And that does lead me to the next question. You've helped thousands of dogs and have trained, I believe, over 8,000 students online. What is the success story or client transformation that you're most proud of?
Oh my gosh. Okay. That one is such a hard one because there are so many of them. I feel like whenever someone asks me this question, I never really know what to say because they're all different in their own way and like the successes that they have had. And so this one, I feel like most of the time when people ask this, the answer that you always get from dog trainers is like, oh, this dog was going to be put down and this dog was like super aggressive and like now this dog, blah, blah, blah. But I'll be honest with you, I think that one of the most fulfilling stories that stands out in my mind, and she had driven all the way, I think it was like from Kentucky or like from Tennessee, somewhere like around there, had driven all the way to do some sessions with me. And she had this Catahoula mix that was like super hyperactive and like didn't really care about her, had maybe a little bit of anxiety and reactivity and stuff, but she wanted to go and live in her car and she wanted to road trip around the United States at like a lot of like notable places. But her dog was like super destructive, didn't like listen to her at all. And then after like working with her and stuff, didn't hear from her for quite a long time, got an update from her at one point, and she sent like me this like video montage and this like album, like this Google Photos album of her dog doing like a place command, like on like different places, like all around the nation. And I was like, that is the coolest freaking thing that I think anyone has ever sent to me, right? Because also, I mean, not to like say that like, oh, I just work with so many people that I forget people, but like sometimes those stories of those dogs won't listen, can sometimes be destructive, has a little bit of reactivity and anxiety and stuff, and like the owner like wants this thing. It's just like so common, right? And after you've been training, I've been training dogs since 2016, like it's just, you get a lot of it. And so you don't think that much of it, but it's just like something that was like so simple. It made such a big impact, and not just like on her life, but imagine that dog's life, right? Imagine how free that dog was living in like, the owner had like a Subaru that she like outfitted. That's so cool. And I don't know if like, there's like some part of me that like subconsciously like wants to live out of my car and like have a dog that like I roll around with or something like that. But like, I don't know. I just think that that was like one of the most awesome things. Unfortunately, I wish I still had that, but like it was in like an old Google Drive that like I don't have access to anymore. Like when she sent it to me, I've reached out to her and then I got a text message back of like, hey, I know that you're trying to reach blah, 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 but this is actually, whatever. I just got like a new phone like a year ago. And I was like, oh, I don't have her number anymore and I don't have those pictures. But anyway, yeah,
That's
I
a
thought
bummer.
that was super cool. Yeah.
What about mentoring and helping new dog trainers and new business owners? Have you had any cases that stand out that you're really proud of and you've seen their business grow and you've seen them grow as a dog trainer? Because that's a massive ripple effect. I mean, when you start training trainers,
Yeah.
those trainers go out and they create social media accounts and they help people online and they start working with people in person. And so it's one of the greatest impacts that we can have as dog trainers is training new trainers.
Yes, definitely. And it's funny. So one of my first programs that I made for dog trainers was called the Dog Trainer Business Accelerator. And so it was supposed to be like an 8-week guided program. So I did that. I had my first round of students. And then I had it as an evergreen product. So I did it once live with a group cohort and I guided them 8 weeks and we met up every single week, blah, blah, blah. So then I had it as evergreen, which means that like you can just purchase, the course, but you do not get my help at a lower price, right? And so someone had purchased that course and gone through it, started her own business, followed me on Instagram, and then we ended up like actually becoming friends. And so like when she goes through like North Carolina, we meet up for coffee and crepes. And it was just from like her starting, like she went into this course, started her own business. And so like now we follow each other on social media, like we send each other memes and stuff, and we meet up for crepes and coffee when she, comes through on her way to her parents' house. And I just think that that is just wicked cool. And just like, there's obviously, now that I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, oh, but then like all these other people that like I know about. And it's just like so cool because for me, the reason why I'm so passionate about helping other people become the best business owners that they can be is because I think a lot of harm comes to dogs and the dog training community is really looked down on. When people like owning your own business is hard. You wear so many different hats and you drop you're juggling so many different balls and you have to know which balls that you're juggling are glass and which ones are rubber and which ones you can let fall and will either bounce or they will break, right? And so when all of these different things, I think a lot of dog trainers accidentally have a lot of glass balls break and it causes a lot of harm that they didn't mean to do intentionally. When you don't know better, you can't do any better. And so for me, why I love talking about this stuff and I get I guess, passionate about it, which I didn't
Mhm.
realize I had such strong opinions, is that like I know that when I'm helping these people, I'm not only helping them achieve their dream, but the ripple effect that they will have on dogs and the humans that own them is going to be huge. And so I just think that it's going to make the dog training industry a safer and better place when people have these systems and operating procedures and they just feel really aligned in their business and they feel really clear and they feel really confident and they're not like in panic mode, because nothing good comes of panic mode except for more panic and stress, and
Mhm.
you'll drop the glass ball. So I would say that like from like my mentorship and stuff, that's probably one of the more rewarding ones that I can think of. But I don't want to say that for people that are watching this, they're like, well, what about me, Natalie? Did you not enjoy our time together? I did. I have so many stories. I got to choose one.
Well, being a teacher, I think, is very rewarding. I mean, I have 4 friends of mine that I don't even like to say mentoring because it kind of puts us a level above. Where
Yeah.
I just like talking with dog trainers. I like working with dog trainers. I like problem solving with dog trainers. I think it helps me grow as a trainer, as a teacher. And there's 4 buddies of mine. They all run their own dog training businesses now. They're all very successful. And they've gone out and they've done different things where they're training with clubs. One of them is competing in French ring. His name's Sergio. He runs a successful business down in Texas. I'm going to do
Yeah.
a seminar down there.
Oh,
Another one
nice.
of my buddies, he has a great business that he's running in California. And he invited me to go do a seminar over there, which is really cool. And another one of my buddies, he just reached out on one of those 10-minute consultations that I had. And he said he's been studying my content online and he had some questions and we ended up talking for about an hour, of course, because I go over the 10 minutes and we talk all the time still. And he actually drove out to my location and then we drove 10 hours for a Larry Crone seminar. And the whole
Nice.
drive out there, we're talking dog training the entire way, talking dog training, the seminar on the way back. That I think is really cool. And it's like what Michael Ellis says all the time, a rising tide lifts all boats. So
Yes.
it's really cool to help and see the transformation. And when you're talking to someone who likes the journey as much as you do, that's always the most fun as well. That's why I really like, I enjoy training the average pet owner, but I really love training trainers
Yes.
just because they're equally obsessed. And I do want to ask, if you don't mind, about you mentioned this briefly earlier, but canine performance. When you
Yeah.
left canine performance, you essentially had to rebuild your career from scratch.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind in that chapter of your life, and how did you find the strength to start over?
That was that is no one has ever asked me that before. Oh geez. What was going, oh man. I think at that point in my life I was in such survival mode because it was like from the outside looking in, it was a wildly successful business. In about 3 months, I had done $500,000 worth in sales. And I was like doing this huge program. My YouTube popped off, TikTok went absolutely viral, my Instagram was like really popping off. I felt like I had like reached this level of like I had made it and I had proved to myself and I had worked so incredibly hard to get there. And then for all of that to just suddenly go away in order for my own survival, it was just like at that point when I was like starting over, it's weird to feel such like a deep sense of loss, like almost like you lost a part of yourself. I know earlier I talked about don't put yourself so much like as your business, like as like it needs to be outside of yourself. You are your own person. You are not your business. But sometimes that's not always possible because you put so much into creating something, right? And
Mhm.
especially something that has a lot of impact and that you are so, so proud of, that when I had to start all over, that it was just like it was survival mode. I like there wasn't a moment to think because I didn't have any money. I had to go and open a credit card and buy a car because I didn't have a car because it was something that was used against me in that relationship. So I had to put $5,000 on that car. I had to, I had saved up a lot of money to try and get a place where I could continue training dogs, thinking that I would still have my business. And then I didn't. So at that point in time, there actually wasn't any thought at all. It was like, okay, everything that I know needs to come together, and I don't have any other choice. I have to make this work. It wasn't like how do you find the strength? It was like, you don't have any other option. You have to do this, right? And I mean, I guess I did have some other options because I do have a pretty robust like corporate background, and I could have worked for another dog trainer. There's like off leash training that's like nearby that's like really popular. I could go work at Sit Mean Sit or something like that. So I did have some different options, but at the time, none of those things crossed my mind. I was like, you are in survival mode and you need to hit the ground and you immediately need to start running. And so, yeah, it was weird to like be grieving a part of yourself that you felt like died, while also at the same time needing to be like in hustle, grind, entrepreneur mode, and just be like, you need to just get this up and running fast. And I feel like it hasn't been until like the past like couple of years, maybe like the past like 2 years, definitely in the past 1 year, that I feel like I finally kind of started to come out of survival mode from like that initial time. So I feel like now I'm like really in my groove. I feel like really aligned in what it is that I am doing. And I can like kind of like sink into it. And like, I feel like for the first time in a really long time, I can really enjoy every single part of the process, even the things that are annoying, like taxes. I mean, like, how blessed am I to have to deal with this situation of my own choosing, right? Like that's the perspective that I get to have like of it now. But yeah, so I don't know if that answered the question, but that's the most honest question that I could or honest answer that I could give to that.
Yeah, and so it wasn't a quick recovery though. I thought you were able to get it up and running rather quickly from the experiences that you had, but it was a challenging road, it sounds like.
Yes and no to like some extent. And so a part of the challenge was because I was being dragged through court through that time. And so I didn't know if during that time I was actually allowed to like fully go all in on my new business
Mm.
that I was starting because of the legal like proceedings that were like happening in the background. And of the repercussions, that type of individual can be very vindictive. And so for those of you that are watching, one of the things I'm also passionate about talking about is domestic violence and the awareness surrounding that against women. And so being in that situation, I didn't want to suddenly have something that was so tender and so frail and potentially be smushed out from someone that could be very vindictive, towards me for leaving. And so that's why like that was like one of the challenges. But when I actually, closed everything out and I was able to have that chapter done and fully go all in on that, then things like really shot up, right? Because I was
Mm.
actually then being able to like put everything into social media. I was able to put everything into everything that I was doing, get all of my courses re-videoed and restructured and, set everything up all new on my own. And then being able to do that. So that was kind of like the hard part of getting it up and running. But then once I was actually able to do that and I didn't have things that were restraining me and holding me down, it actually came up like pretty fast. Honestly, like to this day, I'm like, that really wasn't all that long ago. Like I feel like
Mm.
I shouldn't like Team Canine training shouldn't like be like doing this well for how short a time that it's been. But here I am and I'm very blessed to be here.
Well, it sounds like the struggles that you had to endure during that time made you, in fact, a better teacher, business owner, and dog trainer.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because the thing about it is that like the first iteration of something, yeah, it can be pretty good, but the second iteration of it can oftentimes be better. And so I had a
Mm.
lot of online courses that I wasn't able to do because they were like branded with my previous company. Right. And so I had to redo everything. And at the time it was like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to redo all of this? But then having to like do everything all over again, I was like, you know what? Some of these ways that I was training and some of my ways of thinking was actually kind of outdated. Like I'm not that
Mm.
trainer anymore. Like I don't believe those things anymore. And so it was actually something where I became a better trainer. I became a better educator, and I really refined my craft of creating online digital products and like selling things digitally because I had to like redo the entire thing. And so that really, I think that's one of the main reasons why creating online courses and online digital products are such a strong wheelhouse of mine, is because I had to redo a whole bunch of stuff and sell them from scratch again. And so that like really helped a lot. So it's one of those things where it's like I wouldn't be where I am today and the best version that I am today without that, but it kind of sucks to have to go through that. Like I shouldn't have had to endure that. But and if I had to redo it again, would I choose differently? Yeah, for sure. But it where I am today, I mean, it's a good spot to be. I'm happy with it.
But we often grow through these struggles, and it
For
sounds
sure.
like it caused you to look back and reevaluate the processes that you had
Yes.
and exercise and self-reflection, and to try to figure out a better way to do it, to streamline the process, which, as we were talking about before, it creates that ripple effect. Sure, it helps you with your business and what you're doing, but it also helps all the people that you mentor and you work with and you coach. And
Definitely.
speaking of mistakes and improving on them, in your experience, what's the most common mistake new dog owners make during the first few months of having a new dog? And what's the simplest way to fix it before it becomes a real problem?
Good question. I think that the biggest mistake is giving too much freedom way too soon. I like if it's a puppy, if it's a
Mhm.
dog that you get from a rescue, whatever it may be, I don't think people date their dog. And what I mean by that is that like when you're first getting to know someone, you don't just like go all in and you're like, okay, let's go ahead and get married and start a family and like buy some property, right? It's like, hey, like we're gonna get to know each other. We're gonna have some spatial boundaries here. We're gonna see like what are the things that you like, what are the things that you don't like. Here are the things that I like and that I don't like, right? But a lot of times people they like get a dog and they immediately see the dog as an extension of themselves instead of as a separate entity that is of their own.
Mhm.
And so they quickly become like enmeshed really fast. And I think that that can create some like poor social connections with the dog. And it can exacerbate a lot of problems or create some new ones. So maybe the dog already had a predisposition for certain things. And so, like, not taking that time to set structure and giving, and giving them too much free space too soon to kind of do whatever, it can, really exacerbate those, or it can like the dog never had that problem. And now suddenly they're like, I don't know what to do with this much choice. I don't know what to do with this much space. I don't know what to do with this much social resource, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that that can lead to a lot of issues. And so I think that the simplest way to do that is one, just tethering the dog for one. I think that a lot of people lose the leash like way too soon. So just simply like umbilical cord training and then also having tether training away from you and also making sure that you have some structure. And when I say structure, I mean predictability surrounding key events that happen in the dog's life. So big mistake, too much, too soon, how to fix it, put a little bit of structure, some stop and go signals. You're going to use the leash to be able to do that and get into a really good flow as you start to learn about your dog, as you are dating your dog, so to speak. Yeah, so that's my opinion. I don't know. I think that it's one of those things where like any dog trainer has like five things that immediately like pop into their mind of like the big things that people do. But I would say that like across the board, that would have to be my number one thing that I see.
I completely agree. And a lot of the other issues that people have stem from doing that initial structure and management the wrong way when they're dealing with destructive behaviors or dangerous behaviors or the dog's going potty inside the house. All the problems that develop often in the beginning happens because they don't put a proper structure and have a good routine and management for the dog that they just had. And I think some of it could be because maybe they feel bad. They don't want to put the dog in a crate, or they don't want to put them in a playpen, or they don't want to restrict them by putting puppy gates up.
Yeah.
But as you said, it really does help prevent a lot of issues from developing. And
Yeah.
then it gives the dog significantly more freedom later on. Are
Yes.
there certain things that you have to tell your clients to motivate them to take the time to do the process of setting it up in the beginning, even though you're front loading a lot of work and it's going to take more time in the beginning? The amount of time and the amount of stress that it saves you down the road, I think, is invaluable. But not everyone sees that from the beginning. Is there a strategy to help get them to understand the importance?
Yeah, and I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Nate, of like literally saying of like hey, this is going to be a longer process. And so a part of getting that client adherence to like setting that up to begin with is telling them of like first understanding what is the ultimate, like what is your dream life with your dog? When you fantasize about 5 years from now, what are you and your dog doing? What is like an ideal day for you guys, look like? And then taking that and being like, okay, so here's where we currently are. And if we want to be here, that if we don't do these different things here, you're going to have to do them anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
But instead of reaching that goal in a year, let's say, we're looking at like maybe 5 years later of doing that, because you're going to struggle all of that time. And the end goal, your ultimate desire, is going to be way further on, down the timeline. And so just kind of understanding what it is that they ultimately want from their dog, and not just like a tangible behavior, but like more of like the emotional thing that they want out of their dog, and being like, okay, if you want that tangible and emotional thing, let's go ahead and do X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. And we're going to break that down into like a really, micro bite-sized steps in a systematic and process oriented way. So it's not just like a bunch of stuff like all at once. And then so that way we can stream it all together, so that way we can reach your goal much faster than if you didn't do these things. And being really clear and honest, not scaring them. We're not fear mongering, but being really upfront and being like, hey, these are the things that I'm seeing. I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing that your dog is going to become leash aggressive, but what I am seeing right now is that your dog does have a predisposition to a really fearful response. And as we go on the walk, you can see X, Y, Z. So if we don't do these things, your dog may end up with really severe leash aggression. And so we want to really mitigate that, but we need to do these different things. So knowing the end goal, telling them what is the consequences if you don't, and being really honest, not fear mongering, but being honest with tact and with kindness. So that's how I approach it. I'm not sure I don't know how other people approach it, but I think that it's a very common approach when we try to get clients to adhere to it.
Yeah, it is a good approach. And it goes back again to what we were talking about earlier, giving them the reason behind doing the things that we're asking them to do.
Yes.
I'm not just telling you to do this because I think it's fun to set all these things up and do this additional work, but it's going to be incredibly valuable because it's going to reduce a lot of the struggles and headaches that you would be dealing with had you not taken these steps up front. But it's also better for the dog. It ends up being less stressful for the dog. Just like you said, some dogs, people give them way too much freedom too soon. And that could be part of the problem. And that could create issues like stress and anxiety. So we're not just doing it for the human, we're also doing it for the dog.
Yes.
And so I think using both of those is a good way to get people to do it, not because we're trying to control or manipulate, but because we want to give them the best chances of giving the dog the best quality of life possible. Yes. And speaking of behaviors, if you could take a magic wand and you could instantly teach every dog in the world one behavior, what would that be and why?
Leash walking, hands down. It would be leash walking. One, because I love to teach leash walking. It is like my favorite thing to teach a dog. But two, I think that when people get a dog, myself included, what do they imagine their day-to-day life to be like? They imagine taking a leisurely walk through a neighborhood with their dog, or walking around a farmer's market, or going on a hike or something like that. But it involves locomotion with their dog. And I think I've said this in a lot of my previous content before, but I'm also a very firm believer that you can walk your way to a better relationship with your dog, because there's environmental factors at play. And if your dog can ignore those and cooperate with you, choose you over the environment, I think that says a lot about the health of the relationship that you have with your dog. It's not the end all be all, and there's like some nuance there, but I think that a lot more people would be happy because they want to get out, they want to enjoy the sunshine and everything like that. And when they get a dog, what's one of the first things they go to Petco, they go to PetSmart, they get a little collar, and they go take a walk somewhere, right? So I don't know.
We might not have a job if that was the case, though.
I know. Because that's like the most envied thing, but that's okay. If that means that there's more happy people and happy dogs, I can find some other way to capitalize on whatever other behavior. But yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. A lot of problem behaviors would be mitigated if dogs were just able to get better exercise because they could walk on a leash. So
Yeah, I thought that was a really great answer. And it would add a lot of value to people to be able to take their dogs out, especially the ones that are struggling with reactivity, extreme pulling, you
yeah.
name it, the list goes on. Looking ahead to the future in dog training, let's say 2035, what changes or innovations do you hope to see in the industry? And what outdated practices would you like to see disappear?
Mm, So I think so. Starting from because I got a lot of my experience during COVID, I think that that's like when I really hit my stride, like as a dog trainer, and that ushered in a whole new wave of dog training, which was virtual dog training. And
Mhm.
it's funny looking back because I got a lot of flack in the dog training industry for creating like an online training program. But now, if you look around, everyone is coming out with
Mhm.
an online training program. And I think it's only going to get bigger and it's going to get better. So I think that things are going to become a lot more digital, especially looking at the generation that's coming up. Is in-person services going to be antiquated and like be done away with? No, not at all. We're always going to need that touch. But I do think that my prediction is that I think that custom GPTs are going to become way more mainstream. I think dog trainers are going to digitize their brain of dog training and they're going to upload it into some sort of like GPT of some sort and sell that GPT and then go ahead and have that thing train the clients using AI as like a training and education mechanism, and then have an in-person or one-on-one component for the things that AI will inevitably not be able to
Mhm.
answer or to be able to help with. So I think that more digital products are going to be like the future of that. And for things that I kind of hope to that are done away with, this is like I'm going to be screaming into the void here, but if I could wave a magic wand, the thing that I hope is done away with by would you say 2035 is this
2035.
whole feud in between pure positive training, balance training, Lima training, Nipopo training. It's like, how about dog training? And that's it. And so I honestly, I kind of hope with the rise of like AI and like these custom GPTs or like educational modes that people are going to have, is that I think that there's so much information on the internet that AI is going to pull from. And people like yourself and people like Michael Ellis and other like industry giants have education and knowledge about balanced dog training tools that I think that regardless of how you spin it, I think that ethical and humane training practices with tools like prong collars and e-collars, because AI is going to be at the forefront of a lot of what we have for our consumers, it's going to get integrated into a lot of the content that people are going to be absorbing about dog training. I could totally be wrong, but I think that that also might make my wish come true of there be less friction in between pure positive force free and the quote unquote balance trainers and everything like that. So I think that those are my predictions and my hopes for the future.
And you make training look effortless because you do focus on connection, not control. For listeners who want to build the same bond with their dogs, where can they go to learn from or to follow your work?
Excellent. So I think that my website of www.teamcaninetraining.com is probably the best place because for dog owners, you kind of only have a few options. You can enter my learning lab, which is a affordable, low cost, easy digital resource for specifically designed for dog owners from positive reinforcement, basic obedience, all the way up into advanced obedience with like off leash recall, behavior modification, e-collar training. 3-day free trial, cancel anytime. You can go ahead and get in there, or you can do one-on-one virtual training sessions with me, or also a board and train as well. And then for my aspiring or established dog trainers, then I have my mentorship programs where we can work one-on-one, or you can enter my academy, which is my mastery mentorship program from everything from dog training, learning theory, all the way up to building your business. Or you can just buy courses from me, which lead generation, social media, website design, sales copy, whatever it may be, email marketing. I have it all. So those would be the places, but you can find all of that in just one place in my website of teamcaninetraining.com.
And as always, all the links will be in the description of this video. Natalie, I really appreciate you taking the time today and sharing your wisdom with my audience. And for everyone else, remember, every dog is a rock star. Sometimes they just need the right coach to bring out the music. Thanks again for watching.